Beneath the glittering surface of the sea, deeper than sunlight could reach, the mermaid princess Ariel guided Rhine and Aurora through the twisting ocean currents atop a massive enchanted fish. As they rowed, Rhine quietly recast the transformation spell, his fingers glowing faintly, to ensure the dog-turned fish didn't revert mid-journey. They passed through boiling whirlpools, drifted over volcanic vents that bubbled with ancient heat, and finally entered a coral forest twisted and grotesque, as if born from a nightmare. The coral writhed in haunting silence, gnarled and bone-white, jagged like a predator's teeth. Skeletons hung in its branches, humans long drowned, and, more chillingly, a few unfortunate merfolk caught by accident. When sea creatures dared to swim too close, the coral polyps stirred, reaching with fleshy tendrils, hungry to entrap anything living. Ryan narrowed his eyes. A place like this could only shelter something twisted. No good soul would choose to live here. Ariel's voice trembled slightly as she glanced over her shoulder at her human companions. The sea hag lives just ahead. Please be cautious. She has a strange and volatile temperament. Be respectful, and whatever you do, don't anger her. She wields dark magic that even my father, King of the Seas, dares not provoke, Ariel added, her tone hushed with fear. Though she tried to speak evenly, the princess's heart pounded. She had heard the stories, the sea hag's name spoken only in whispers. Looking at Aurora and Rhine, Ariel felt a fierce, protective instinct. Their features seemed so youthful to her, childlike even, though she couldn't quite gauge the human measure of age. In her mind, they needed shielding. What if the sea hag took offense at a word? What if she devoured them, just for fun? Aurora raised an eyebrow, lips parting as if to scoff, but then caught a glance from her silent teacher and swallowed her retort. Black magic this, black magic that, she grumbled inwardly. I've barely started studying, and yet I can already tell. Teacher Rhine's abilities must far exceed anything that hag could conjure. Still, her pride gave way to curiosity. The merfolk didn't seem to wield magic with any complexity. For all the legends of sirens summoning storms and dragging sailors to watery graves, the truth appeared far less ominous. Ariel herself was kind, vulnerable even, far from monstrous. Could it be that the stories humans told of merfolk were just misunderstandings? Was peaceful coexistence possible? Aurora swam up beside Ariel, her voice gentle. You're a princess. Why are you going to such a dangerous place? What could be so important? Ariel paused. Her eyes softened, filled with memory and longing. After I turned 15, I was allowed to swim to the surface. I fell in love with the world above, your world. The colors, the air, the freedom. Her voice grew wistful. You humans can cross oceans, scale mountains, walk forests that never end. But me? I can't even set foot on land. Then her gaze brightened as she continued. And recently, I met someone, a human, a prince. I saved him from drowning during a storm. I watched over him until he awoke. I had to leave, but her words caught for a moment before she smiled sadly. I want to be with him, to walk beside him, speak with him, share a life. But my grandmother says it's impossible, that no matter how strong the love, a mermaid and a human could never truly be together. She looked ahead again, voice soft. That's why I'm going to the sea hag. If there's even the smallest chance her magic could make me human, I'll take it. Aurora fell into thoughtful silence. Is there nothing teacher can do? If he helped Ariel, she wouldn't need to risk dealing with that hag. Then something struck her. Ariel, Aurora said carefully, why can't mermaids and humans be together? The question hung in the water, strange and naive, and yet piercing. Ariel blinked. She opened her mouth, but no answer came. She slowed, nearly halting mid-swim. Why can't we be together? Because of the tail? Grandmother said humans hate tails, that legs are what's normal. But is that really true? Would every human reject a mermaid? If the man I love were a sailor, someone who spent his life at sea, wouldn't that be enough? The question spiraled through her thoughts, unraveling assumptions she'd never questioned before. Fortunately, The coral forest cleared, and before them stood a clearing dense with kelp and bone-white sand. At the center, crooked and eerie, loomed a house built entirely of bones. It seemed to breathe with the ocean itself. Ariel shivered but spoke steadily. "This is the sea hag's lair." It was her first time seeing it in person, but she tried to keep her voice calm, like an older sister guiding younger siblings. "You two go first," she said. "Ask your question. That's all you need." She might not even ask for payment. But inside, Ariel's stomach churned. "My wish isn't so simple. What kind of price will she demand of me?" Ryan watched silently, his gaze calm as still water. "To think a day would come where I must rely on another magician to grant a wish," he mused, amused at the irony. Outside a crooked house made entirely of bleached sea bones, the sea hag sat upon a throne of rusted anchors and driftwood, feeding a toad and a bloated water snake with the absent-minded gentleness one might offer to a songbird. Unlike the graceful merfolk with their gleaming tails, the sea hag bore a twisted, almost human form. Her limbs were long and sinewy, her hair a tangled mass of green seaweed, and her skin a pallid, sickly blue that shimmered faintly in the gloom like something drowned long ago. When the anglerfish swam into view, its enormous mouth aglow with bioluminescence, revealing the two humans inside its transparent belly, the sea hag looked up with a raspy laugh. "Well now, humans inside a living lanternfish. Still breathing too. What a deliciously bizarre sight." Had Ariel arrived alone, sixth daughter of the Sea King and beloved granddaughter of the Grand Matron, it would have warranted full attention. But today, the sea hag's gaze slid right past her. She was too preoccupied with the spectacle of the strange guests. Ryan stepped forth first, his tone smooth as polished shell. "Esteemed sea witch, I come bearing a question, one only a wise woman of your renown might answer." The sea hag squinted. "No such thing as free wisdom, boy. If you've heard even half the stories about me, you'll know I never answer without a price." She gestured lazily, causing the water snake to slither down her arm and coil at her feet. "State your question. I'll name your payment once I've weighed its worth." Ryan inclined his head with a knowing smile. "I seek knowledge of Maleficent, the Black Witch. I've heard you once belonged to the same coven, perhaps still do. Do you know where she resides now? Her castle, her strengths, and her weaknesses?" He paused, then added calmly, "I'd also like to know more about the coven itself. Its members, their locations, how many still walk the world, and how one might survive an encounter with any of them." Silence fell like a curtain. The sea hag froze. Her pale eyes widened, and her hand jerked, knocking the toad from her lap. You lunatic," she croaked. Her voice lost its earlier playfulness, replaced by a sharp edge. She waved her hands wildly, her seaweed hair thrashing in the current. Leave. You don't know what you're asking. If I tell you anything at all, they'll know, and they'll come for me. There won't even be bones left to bury." Her voice turned low and hoarse. "They are ancient, ageless, powerful beyond comprehension. Kingdoms fall with their breath. Mountains crumble beneath their gaze." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Those people," she'd said. "Not we. Not my coven." "Interesting." He filed the phrasing away, the beginning of a theory forming in his mind. He had expected the sea hag to demand some ridiculous price, his name, his voice, a drop of future blood. But to refuse outright? That was unexpected. Troubling. Even Ariel looked stunned. She'd heard countless cautionary tales of merfolk who came begging for the sea hag's magic. Their wishes always came true, though usually twisted. But never had the sea hag declined a request. And this wasn't even a wish. It was a question. How dangerous was this coven, if the sea hag herself trembled at the thought of betraying them? Ariel looked at Rhine and Aurora with renewed awe and worry. Just who were they, and what had they gotten themselves into? Rhine, unshaken, pressed on. "Dear sea witch, your name is whispered across the oceans. You're known not only for your power, but for your integrity. You never refuse a bargain, only demand its price." He leaned in just slightly. "Would you now tarnish that legend by turning away, two travelers who merely seek the truth. The sea hag didn't reply. Ryan glanced sideways and gently nudged Aurora's foot beneath the glowing fish's belly. She blinked once in understanding. Aurora stepped forward, voice like honey poured into still water. Calm, sweet, and warm. Forgive us, O Lady of the Deep. It was never our intent to insult your wisdom, she said, her voice laced with elegance and sorrow. In all the tales, you are described as the one who never refuses a deal, only asks for what is deserved. And yet, today, she hesitated, feigning confusion. Today I find myself disheartened. Have those stories exaggerated your greatness? The sea hag twitched. Aurora continued, layering admiration beneath her disappointment. Surely, a true mistress of magic does not fear others' wrath, only demands a price worthy of the knowledge she holds. Ariel listened in quiet awe. The girl's voice, so rich, so melodic, it rivaled the famed siren songs of the sea. It made her heart tremble. And I thought no human could match the voice of a mermaid, she thought, cheeks flushing slightly with shame at her earlier arrogance. These two humans, they're not ordinary. One is a silver-tongued scholar, and the other, a golden-voiced enchantress. The sea hag shifted in her seat. Her eyes, once sharp and hostile, now gleamed with reluctant interest. Fine, she muttered. I cannot go against my own legend. Can I? Her eyes flicked to Ryan. Your request is vast. It demands two payments. For the first, information about Maleficent, where she hides, the strength of her dragon form, and what chinks lie in her scales. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You'll pay with truth. I'll ask you 3 questions. If your answers satisfy me, I'll grant what you seek. Ryan inclined his head slightly, intrigued. A riddle game, he thought. Classic, as old as fairy tales themselves. Answer well, and you win wisdom. Fail, and perhaps lose more than your pride. He smiled. Then ask away.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Answering riddles? That's great, Ariel thought, her heart lifting with joy. She introduced Ryan to the sea hag with confidence. This silver-haired human boy is a learned scholar. I doubt there's any question he can't answer. At least it's not some trial of fighting sea monsters or gouging out eyes. Ariel mused with relief. The sea hag scoffed. I've been to the world above the sea and met many so-called learned human scholars, most of them wrinkled old men or stubborn pedants. I've asked this very riddle to hundreds of self-proclaimed know-it-alls. None of them could answer it. Every last one failed on the first question. So, but the first question is already that hard, Ryan said, his expression growing serious. The sea hag cleared her throat, stroking her fat water snake, and declared in a sharp voice. Here are the rules. The first question is a riddle. I will recite the riddle, and you must give the correct answer. If you fail to answer the first question, there's no point in proceeding to the next ones, as they all build upon it. You have 3 chances to answer incorrectly, and you must provide the correct answer within 1 minute of the riddle's recital. If you fail, I will never reveal Maleficent's whereabouts to you, no matter how many times you return. Now listen carefully. This is a riddle that has stumped countless wise men. 2 chances to err, a 1-minute time limit. Such harsh conditions. Ariel, still trying to grasp the game's rules, was stunned as the sea hag began the riddle. In the human world, there exists a precious treasure. No one can see it, yet countless poems and writings praise it. No one can touch it, yet can be polluted and cleansed. It is lighter than the wind, yet more valuable than gold. Softer than mist, yet it endures through the ages, never fading away. Humans on land possess it, but merfolk and other sea-dwelling beings do not. And the strangest, most peculiar thing about this treasure is, it is more important to the dead than the living. Now, my wise friends, tell me, what is this treasure? The sea hag recited the riddle as if it were a poem. Ariel was astonished by its strangeness. This is so unfair. Such a weird riddle, she thought, feeling indignant on behalf of her new friends. If it were me, Even if given months, I wouldn't be able to figure it out. Wait, hold on. Ariel shivered slightly as a memory surfaced. She felt as if she had recently heard something about the answer. As soon as the riddle ended, Ryan's eyes sharpened, as though he had a hunch. 50 seconds, the sea hag announced, beginning her countdown. Aurora's mind raced. Something humans have that merfolk don't. What could it be? Legs? No, that's not right. Legs are visible. The riddle describes something intangible. Something without form. What could it be? Aurora's thoughts blurred. The blessing that had enhanced her learning and memory wasn't helping her navigate this improvisational challenge. 30 seconds, the sea hag intoned coldly, her countdown striking Aurora like a gong and further jarring her thoughts. An intangible treasure. Courage? Or perhaps kindness or some other virtue? Her mind turned to mush as she instinctively connected the riddle to abstract concepts. Courage and kindness can't be seen or touched, and they're certainly valuable, she reasoned. But can such virtues endure through the ages? Oh, of course they can. Individuals may pass, but their spirit can live on. Aurora shouted confidently. It must be some positive spiritual quality, like courage, justice, or kindness. She suspected the answer was a specific concept, such as courage. But to cover her bases, Aurora deliberately framed her answer vaguely, hoping the sea hag might accept it as correct without using up their second chance. Wrong answer, the sea hag declared icily. Her next word struck like a bolt of lightning. 20 seconds. You now have one chance left. No, that's not it. The answer isn't an abstract virtue, Ryan interjected firmly. Abstract virtues clearly don't fit the riddle's last two lines. 15 seconds, the sea hag pronounced, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Aurora quickly realized where her reasoning had gone wrong. Neither courage, justice, kindness, nor wisdom were uniquely human qualities. How could anyone deny that merfolk might also possess these virtues? Aurora should have realized the flaw in her reasoning sooner. But the strict time limit had pressured the 10-year-old into making a mistake born of anxiety. Clenching her fists tightly, her palms sweating, Aurora paced frantically. Could such a thing really exist? Something intangible, unseen, and untouchable that humans have but merfolk do not. A treasure more important to the dead than the living. Her instincts made her question the validity of the riddle itself. Was this sea, which deliberately presenting an unsolvable puzzle to avoid making the trade? 10 seconds. The relentless countdown continued mercilessly. Suddenly, Ariel's tightly furrowed brow relaxed. She raised her hand abruptly and exclaimed, I know the answer. What? Ariel had guessed it? Aurora's eyebrows shot up in surprise. The gentle and refined mermaid princess was neither a learned scholar nor a particularly quick thinker. Could the riddle's answer be something that a typical human might overlook, but that held profound significance for Ariel, due to her unique experiences? Perhaps the answer was something Ariel had only recently encountered. Aurora's panicked heart eased slightly. If Ariel had figured out the answer, then the riddle would be solved. She would have to remember to thank the mermaid princess properly later. The answer is, Ariel began to declare. Stop. The sea hag's sharp voice cut her off. Princess, this riddle is for the two humans. You are not allowed to answer or give them any hints. Ariel had no choice but to swallow her words, her anxiety growing unbearable. At some point, she had come to fully accept these two human friends and now fretted over their success as if it were her own. Why? Why can't I give him the answer when I've already figured it out? Ariel lamented inwardly. This answer wasn't something people on land would know. Even Ariel herself had only recently learned certain secrets from her grand matron that had illuminated the solution for her. It was over. Completely over. Ariel despaired. She knew that the prerequisite knowledge needed to solve this riddle was an obscure secret. How could humans from a surface world possibly know it? Meanwhile, Aurora, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, felt her heart tighten again as she heard the sea hag forbidding Ariel to speak. She instinctively turned to her teacher. Ryan, resting his cheek on his hand, showed no visible reaction. Of course. No wonder Ariel knows the answer, Rhine said. It was unclear whether he was hinting to Aurora or merely speaking to himself. The sea hag resumed her cold countdown. 5 seconds remaining. You're about to lose, humans. So the answer must be something Ariel held dear? Aurora, grasping at straws as defeat loomed, shouted out a desperate answer. Love. Is the answer love? Oh, specifically human love for mermaids. She emphasized the notion of human love for mermaids, reasoning that this was something humans possessed, but merfolk did not. In the instant she shouted her answer, Aurora's body trembled. She thought she had solved it. An overwhelming joy surged through her heart. Yes, love was invisible, yet celebrated in countless poems and songs. It was untouchable, yet could be polluted or purified. Love, having no physical form, was lighter than wind and softer than mist. It was also a treasure more valuable than gold, one that could endure through the ages and be immortalized in records and stories. And wasn't Ariel currently yearning for love with a human prince? Human love for mermaids perfectly fit the riddle's criteria. It all lined up, completely lined up. In that fleeting second, Aurora's thoughts raced. She felt a wave of relief, as if she had survived a catastrophe. Did I get it right? Surely this is it. Thank goodness, I answered it in the final 3 seconds. Aurora looked expectantly at the sea hag, who had fallen silent. Surely the judge would now announce her answer as correct. But when the sea hag heard human love for mermaids, she froze in place, her eyes widening slightly, as if transformed into a statue. The next moment, she announced flatly, "Wrong answer. The final chance had been wasted." In that instant, Aurora realized her mistake. The riddle's last line flashed through her mind. This treasure is more important to the dead than to the living. Love didn't fit the criteria. Love is clearly more important to the living than the dead. If someone is dead, then love holds little significance, Aurora thought. Even for those who value love deeply, it would hold equal importance to both the living and the dead, not greater importance to the dead. Aurora's heart plummeted. With 2 seconds remaining, the sea hag was poised to declare their failure. Aurora could think of no better answer. Seeing Aurora's expression of despair, the sea hag smirked. From the start, she hadn't expected the humans to solve the riddle. Simply knowing the prerequisite knowledge to answer it was rare enough, let alone actually cracking it. Then, in that moment, a crisp, confident voice rang out. An immortal soul. The silver-haired boy, Rhine, who had been silent, suddenly lifted his chin and repeated the answer word for word. An eternal, immortal soul. Ariel's mouth fell open. She first stared at Rhine in disbelief, her eyes wide, but soon a smile appeared on her face, and she let out a sigh of relief for her 2 new friends. She knew this human friend had answered correctly. Huh? What does that even mean? Aurora blurted out, confused. Was this answer really in line with the riddle? Under the incredulous gaze of the sea hag, Rhine was certain he had given the correct answer. Although the answer had come to him the moment the riddle was read, he had taken the time to carefully consider it, ensuring there was no better option before speaking. Rhine began to explain slowly. An eternal, immortal soul is the answer to this riddle. No one can see the soul, yet countless poems and writings celebrate it. No one can touch the soul, yet it can be tainted or cleansed. We often say vile teachings pollute the soul, while sacred scenes purify it. The soul has no weight, making it lighter than the wind, yet it is priceless, more valuable than gold. The soul is softer than mist, but because it is eternal and immortal, it never fades away, no matter how much time passes. Most importantly, the immortal soul is, of course, far more significant to the dead than to the living. Yet humanity, still bound by their physical forms, remains unaware of the immortal soul's presence. It is precisely because the body is mortal that the soul's immortality holds meaning. Aurora listened to Rhine's explanation, but felt that something was slightly off. Was her teacher deliberately ignoring one of the riddle's lines? If that part were considered, The answer wouldn't align with the riddle at all. But didn't the riddle say? Aurora started to question him, but Ryan seemed to know exactly what she was going to ask. Ryan calmly replied, "Yes, Aurora. As the riddle states, humans possess immortal souls, but merfolk and other non-human intelligent beings do not." The mermaid princess, Ariel, lowered her head and remained silent. "Your answer is correct," the sea hag said, breaking into laughter. "Human, I never expected you to know this. Even in this vast ocean kingdom, only a handful of the wisest elders are aware of this secret." Aurora was stunned. "So that's how it was? If you didn't know this secret beforehand, it would be impossible to come up with this answer. Can this even be called a riddle? If you don't have that prior knowledge, there's no way to solve it," Aurora muttered, feeling a little disheartened. "Aren't riddles and stories supposed to use universally known things as their answers?" Bade Epsilon. But soon, the 10-year-old girl regained a bit of her confidence. At least she hadn't failed because she was stupid. The fact that this human could answer the first question is impressive, but the next two questions aren't long-winded riddles like this one, the sea hag thought. The elderly sea witch then added, "Human lives are far shorter than those of merfolk and other intelligent sea creatures. But what you humans possess, and we do not, is that brilliant, immortal soul. Some say that when the body perishes, the immortal soul ascends into a clear sky, flies toward the shining stars, and rises to a heavenly kingdom. Or, in particularly dire cases, it endlessly falls, descending lower than the ocean floor into the deepest depths of the earth. In any case, it departs to another world, a world we can never see. Others say the immortal soul returns to the human world, once again entering life in the form of a newborn. When an elder passes away and their family sheds their first tears somewhere else in the world, another baby lets out its first loud cry. Death and rebirth are a pair of inseparable twins, forever entwined, never depart. Since the dawn of history, no one has ever truly died." As she finished speaking, the sea hag let out a cackling laugh, her tone verging on madness. "All of these poetic notions are unique to you humans. We, the wise beings who are not human, upon death, simply dissolve into foam or a pool of slime, vanishing without a trace. Because, unlike you, we do not possess an immortal soul. So it really is true." Ryan sighed softly to himself, even though he had known this answer long before. Experiencing it firsthand in this moment gave him a profoundly different feeling. In simplified and adapted versions of The Little Mermaid, or, as it is sometimes called, The Mermaid Princess, the story is often reduced to a love tale designed to be easily understood by children. In these versions, the mermaid princess yearns to become human because she loves the prince. She sacrifices herself, turning into foam at dawn, and her end is viewed as a tragic act of devotion. The story concludes with the heartbreaking image of her body dissolving into sea foam, born for love and perishing for love. But in Hans Christian Andersen's original tale, the story carries deeper theological and religious undertones. The Little Mermaid's desire to marry the prince is driven by a crucial reason: her pursuit of an eternal soul. She hopes that through love and marriage with a human, she too might gain an immortal soul. This religious significance extends to the ending. After becoming foam, the mermaid seemingly hears the voices of angels and transforms into a daughter of the air. The light of God is subtly woven into the narrative. God. Ryan's thoughts swirled. He also noticed a significant difference between the sea hag's explanation of the immortal soul and the one presented in the original story. In the original story, the immortal soul was merely described as ascending to heaven. However, in the sea hag's recounting, although the wise beings of the sea knew about the existence of the immortal soul, its destination remained a mystery. It might rise, it might fall, or it might reincarnate. When an elder passes away and their family sheds their first tear somewhere else in the world, a newborn lets out its first loud cry. Death and rebirth are inseparable twins, forever embracing each other. Ryan was certain that this version bore no resemblance to the original. Its core concept was also drastically different from the Christian scholastic philosophy in the original tale. Instead of implying the existence of a singular deity, it seemed closer to Buddhist ideas of reincarnation, diluting the theological undertones. Could this mean that, in this fantasy world, the immortality of the human soul was merely a natural law, no more extraordinary than water flows downhill, or the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? The immortality of the human soul was not a gift from a singular deity. Perhaps this world had no God, no heaven at all. Even if a heaven existed, it wasn't created by a singular God. It was merely the natural destination for many souls. From Ariel's lack of surprise or doubt when hearing the sea hag's description of the soul's journey, Ryan inferred that the mermaid matriarch's beliefs about the immortal soul aligned with what the sea hag had just shared. In this magical fantasy world, it seemed unlikely that there was an omnipotent, omniscient God. At this thought, Ryan quietly breathed a sigh of relief. This aligned with the understanding he had built since arriving in this world. On this magical continent, at least in the Western countries, there were many diverse faiths, but no dominant monotheistic religion. "All right, human," the sea hag said, her tone a mix of sarcasm and admiration. "I admit you're smarter and more knowledgeable than I thought. But tell me, human, how did you come to know the secret of the immortal soul?" From the moment she posed the first question, the sea hag had never expected the two humans to answer correctly. Even among the wise beings of the sea, only a few knew this secret, let alone human scholars. Human lives were too brief, and their scholars too forgetful. Unlike the legless merfolk, the sea hag had legs and could step onto land temporarily. She had once ventured to the surface and met many human scholars. Those white-haired human sages, who prided themselves on knowing everything, did not even know what their most precious possession was. Perhaps the world's wise beings were all the same, more preoccupied with what they lacked and always forgetting what they had. Yet now, this boy, who appeared to be only 12 or 13, knew the secret of the soul. The sea hag grew wary. Humans who can reach this undersea kingdom. This has never happened in the history of the deep sea kingdom. You've come seeking information about Maleficent and the Witch's Coven, and you know the secret of the immortal soul. Her tone turned icy as she demanded, "Who exactly are you?" Ryan understood the sea hag's astonishment. If he hadn't read the original story and noticed Ariel's hints as she sought the answer, he believed he wouldn't have been able to solve the riddle under such pressure. "Abades." Gracefully, Ryan bowed and responded politely, "We're merely a traveling scholar and his friend." This was no lie. In epics and tales, mages were always portrayed as well-traveled scholars. For many mages, knowledge was a weapon even more frequently used than magic. The sea hag snorted, clearly unconvinced, and then said, "But don't forget, solving the first riddle means nothing. You still have 2 more questions to answer before I'll tell you anything about the Black Witch Maleficent. If you fail to answer even one of the next 2 questions, you won't get the information you seek." Even one question was this difficult. It's truly a fitting prize for the sea hag's help, Ariel thought, a mix of admiration and anxiety. After Rhine and Aurora were done, Ariel herself would need to make a wish to the sea hag, to gain human legs so she could walk on land and be with the prince. For the humans, the exchange was 3 questions. But for her wish, the price would undoubtedly be different. What would that price be? Now for the second question. Listen closely, humans. Aurora and Rhine prepared themselves, nerves taut. Based on the first question, the next one would likely be another riddle, requiring wisdom to solve. They strained their ears, afraid to miss any detail. The sea hag raised her voice and declared, "Humans, you now know the answer to the first question, the eternal, immortal soul. Now tell me, how long is eternity? Eternity, does it mean 100 years? 1,000 years? Or perhaps 10,000 years? Oh, wise humans, tell me, how long is eternity?" Hearing this question, Aurora, who was braced for a mental marathon, nearly stumbled in disbelief. Beside her, Ariel was equally stunned. What kind of question was this? Aurora found the sea hag's question utterly baffling. If it's eternity, how could it have any concept of length? That's completely contradictory. The young girl struggled to make sense of the sea hag's logic. This sea which always seemed to ask the strangest questions. Teacher, isn't eternity just infinitely long? Aurora whispered to Rhine. In factual terms, yes, Rhine replied quietly, but I doubt that's the answer the sea hag is looking for. Deciding to give it a try, Aurora answered. Eternity is infinite time. There were no limits to the number of attempts for this question. And, after all, who could argue that her answer was wrong? The sea hag chuckled. Yes, but if eternity is infinite, then just how long is that? The sea hag's mocking smile irked the young girl. If not for their precarious situation, being at the bottom of the ocean, inside the belly of a giant fish, she might have drawn her sword, reasoning that a sharp blade often made discussions much more amicable. The sword is a universal solution to any riddle, Aurora thought to herself. Even the densest warriors can use this simple logic to solve the most complicated puzzles set by so-called wise men. Noticing the golden-haired girl glancing at her sword, Rhine smirked inwardly, guessing her thoughts. That's so like you, Your Highness. Still, as a virtuous and wise teacher, Rhine lowered his voice to dissuade the princess's violent inclinations. My lady, I know what you're thinking. Even the greatest chess masters in my homeland have considered such moves. I understand you're just entertaining the thought, but it's entirely unnecessary here. Although the sea hag's reputation in this ocean kingdom was abysmal, and her death might even bring cheers, Rhine felt that intimidation by force wasn't the best approach. Aurora nodded lightly. So, how should I answer this question, teacher? How long is eternity? It seemed like a question with no logical entry point. If the last riddle tested knowledge and wisdom, this one is purely peculiar, lacking any clear direction, Rhine mused. Did you notice? When the sea hag spoke earlier about the immortal soul, she used poetic descriptions, just like the previous riddle, which was also phrased poetically. I think this gives us a clue about the kind of answer she wants. Future Queen of the Rose Kingdom, you are right to approach questions with logic. However, most things in the world aren't entirely bound by logic and reasoning. Try to answer this question as if you were in a fairy tale. A fairy tale approach. Aurora pondered her teacher's words. Meanwhile, Ariel grew increasingly anxious as she watched her two human friends whispering. Perhaps due to her innate fondness for humans, she genuinely wished for them to answer the question and achieve their goals. While Aurora was deep in thought, Rhine stepped forward, as calm and composed as a bard weaving a tale around a campfire, and began. Above the sea, deep within the human lands, in a faraway place, there's a mountain of diamonds. This mountain is vast. To climb to its summit would take an entire year. To circle its base would also take a year. And to journey straight across to its other side would likewise require a year. As she listened, Ariel's imagination soared. That must be a truly immense mountain, she thought. Far larger and grander than the tallest peaks I've seen from the surface of the sea. And more magnificent still, it's made of diamonds. I've never seen such a mountain when gazing at the land from the ocean. So, in the human world, deep in the lands far from the sea, there are wonders like this. This thought strengthened her longing to gain legs and live among humans. Her desire grew even stronger, anticipating the moment when the sea hag would grant her wish. She had yearned for the human world for so long, even before meeting the handsome prince. But what does this mountain have to do with eternity? Ariel wondered, confused by Rhine's storytelling. Rhine continued, once every 100 years, a bird flies from a distant place to the Diamond Mountain. It pecks at the mountain with its beak, just once, then flies away. When the bird returns again, another century has passed. Many of the humans living at the mountain's base spend their entire lives without witnessing the bird's visit. Only the longest-lived elders might witness the bird's arrival twice in their lifetime, a memory they cherish as their greatest pride. The sea hag sighed softly. Indeed, human lives are so brief compared to ours. This is a beautiful story about life and time. But how does this story relate to my question? Have you mentioned the length of eternity? Ryan smiled and delivered the story's conclusion. When the entire Diamond Mountain has been worn away by the birds pecking, the first second of eternity will have passed. As the boy finished his tale, the coral reef forest fell into silence. Not a sound could be heard except the bubbling of water escaping cracks and the distant swish of swimming fish. Aurora and Ariel, both listening intently, felt the weight of eternity settle over them. When people speak of infinity or eternity in conversation, they are merely simple words, lengths too abstract to describe. But once infinity and eternity are made tangible, given form and metaphor, they become heavier than the Diamond Mountain itself. Aurora suddenly had an epiphany. So that's it. The second riddle wasn't a literal question, but a way to depict the weight of eternal in the immortal soul. How cunning. The sea hag burst into laughter. Haha, what an interesting answer. As expected of a human with an eternal soul to tell me the weight of eternity so eloquently. How did you come up with such an intriguing answer, human? Ryan answered truthfully. This answer isn't mine. It's from a story I read in a book long ago. I only added a few details. It was a story from Grimm's fairy tales, where a young shepherd answers a king's question with this tale. What made it particularly memorable for Ryan in his past life was its mention in an episode of Doctor Who. He hadn't expected that here, in an entirely different fairy tale, the same answer would prove useful. Seeing the sea hag's evident approval, Ryan felt a quiet sense of relief. Behind him, Aurora's soft voice murmured, "After the Diamond Mountain is pecked away, wouldn't the first second of my teacher's life also have passed?" Ryan's body stiffened slightly. He didn't know if he truly had an immortal soul, but his physical body seemed eternal, unless an accident claimed him. Of course, pondering the heat death of the universe or the end of existence felt premature. He decided to focus on the present instead. As Ryan pricked up his ears, ready for the sea hag's final question, Aurora's clear, bell-like voice rang out again. "Teacher, I've been thinking. Today, after learning such profound secrets from your conversation, I finally understand. Teacher, I am like you. We are both eternal." Ryan flinched as though struck by lightning, but said nothing. The sea hag raised her voice. "And now, humans, it's time for the third and final question. This question is far more difficult than the previous two." As the sea which prepared to speak, Ryan suddenly felt a surge of scorching energy emanating from the distant seawater, piercing the belly of the great fish and radiating to his skin. This burning sensation, it was the power of a wish, the wish of a child of destiny. Based on Ryan's understanding, a child of destiny didn't necessarily have to be the main character of a story. They could also be pivotal supporting characters, like Oz or Aurora's parents. The sea hag, Ryan realized, was also a child of destiny. Her wish was to find the answer to this question. If the first two riddles were tests for the respondents, the third question was the sea hag's deepest desire. Only someone who truly understood the secret of the immortal soul and the weight of eternity could answer it. Suddenly, the sea hag's voice turned icy. "But before I proceed, I must address something, humans. Under normal circumstances, I would never agree to share the secrets of the Black Witch Maleficent or the Witch's Coven. Yet earlier, I inexplicably agreed to this exchange. I suspect you've used some magical means to manipulate my mind." Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't know magic that could charm or twist thoughts. In theory, the sea hag's agreement was entirely her own will. Of course, this accusation wasn't baseless. Aurora's voice, blessed by magic, carried extraordinary power. It was her persuasion that had secured the deal. We're just one question away from learning everything about Maleficent, Ryan thought. Surely the sea hag won't back out now. As if sensing Ryan's concern, the sea hag continued. "I won't suddenly break my promise, but I will add a rule. By the original terms, both of you may answer the questions. However, the first two questions were answered by the silver-haired boy alone. So I believe the final question should be answered by the golden-haired girl. That way, It's fair. Both of you will have participated. Aurora objected. That's unreasonable. You previously said the second and third questions are deeply tied to the first riddle's answer, the immortal soul. From my performance, you can see that I only just learned the secret of the immortal soul. There's no way I can answer your final question. This is clearly meant to hinder us. Ryan was equally puzzled. He couldn't believe the sea hag would forego the answer she desired just to block him from responding. The sea hag smiled as if she had anticipated the rebuttal, presenting herself as though making a great concession. Very well. Both of you may answer. However, if the golden-haired girl is the first to provide the correct answer, I will share everything I know about Maleficent, including her potential weaknesses. The sea hag sneered, her tone deliberate and cunning. But if the silver-haired boy gives the answer first, I won't reveal everything. I'll share only one piece of information about Maleficent. For instance, the last place she used magic to contact me, or the location of her ancient castle. So that was it. Ryan immediately grasped the sea hag's ploy. She wanted to minimize the information she disclosed about Maleficent and the Witch's Coven, avoiding unnecessary risk while technically upholding her agreement. Is Maleficent at her full strength, along with that coven behind her, really so terrifying? Ryan pondered. Go ahead, ask your question, Aurora said, her voice carrying a tinge of unease. She suspected she wouldn't be able to provide the correct answer. It's fine. Even one piece of information would help. There were still 4.5 years until the prophecy's curse would descend. The sea hag smiled wickedly and posed her question, word by word. Now, tell me this. How can beings like us, non-human creatures, obtain an eternal, immortal soul like yours? Ariel pressed her lips together, clearly knowing the answer but bound by the rules not to speak. Grandma told me the answer not long ago. How could humans possibly know it? At that moment, Ryan felt the scorching force of the sea hag's wish radiating from her. It was an unrelenting, fiery energy born of profound longing. This question, Ryan's expression froze. He almost couldn't believe his ears. The sea hag's deepest desire was simply this? Didn't she already know? Ryan, of course, knew the answer. It was the very core of the original tale. The answer was love. If a human genuinely loved a mermaid, they could grant the latter an immortal soul, and the human's own soul would remain untouched. In the original story, the sea hag was described so sparsely that her sudden understanding of the Little Mermaid's intent implied she knew how merfolk could gain an immortal soul. But now, the unrelenting force of her wish was no lie. Could it be that in this world, the sea hag's association with Maleficent and her coven led her to immerse herself in dark magic so deeply that she was utterly ostracized by the Oceanic Kingdom? Was that why she never learned this hidden, beautiful truth? Ryan speculated, glancing at Aurora, who was clearly struggling to find an answer. Aurora couldn't possibly know the answer. After all, she had just learned about the existence of human immortal souls today. How could she know how non-human creatures might gain one? Should I answer myself? Aurora clearly can't solve this. But if I answer, we'll only receive one piece of information. Ryan found himself caught in a dilemma. Suddenly, inspiration struck. A clever idea sparked in his mind. Pointing toward Aurora, Ryan smiled at the sea hag and declared, "My friend has already given you the answer. According to the rules you established, all 3 questions have been answered, and you should now tell us everything about Maleficent." What? The sea hag looked utterly baffled. When did she say anything? She hasn't uttered a word since I posed the question. Ryan scanned the sea hag and Ariel, both looking equally confused, and reiterated the sea hag's own rules. If the golden-haired girl speaks the answer first, you will share all the information you know. By this rule, it doesn't matter if her answer comes before or after the question. It only matters that she said it first. The sea hag's face twisted in disbelief. Answering before the question? Ariel was utterly baffled by the young man's statement. What does that even mean? How can you give an answer when the question hasn't even been asked? Aurora, with her sharp wit, quickly caught on to Ryan's hint. Before the sea hag had asked the final question, she had, in fact, already given the answer once. And that answer was, love, Aurora said. The answer is love, isn't it? Human love for mermaids. It was the same answer she had just given a few minutes earlier to the first question. Of course, the correct answer to the first question had been immortal soul, so her earlier response was wrong. Ryan smiled. Precisely. How intricate are the workings of fate, that the wrong answer to the first question turns out to be the correct answer to the final one. Oh, wise sea witch, even before you pose your question, my friend had already given the correct answer. Is this not yet another sign of destiny? Ryan understood, well, that in such a fantastical world of magic, destiny was no abstract concept, but a tangible force. He himself had once bestowed Aurora with a blessing, placing upon her the prophecy to defeat the Black Witch. Though the prophecy could not fulfill itself automatically, fate always orchestrated bizarre coincidences to bring about its intended outcome. During the first question's discussion, they had essentially answered both questions simultaneously. Ariel chimed in to support her new friend. Yes, that's right. My grandmother just told me recently that while merfolk lack immortal souls, a human's love can grant us one. And at the same time, the human's own soul remains intact. She spoke these words with a smile. The sea hag was stunned. Moments later, she burst into laughter. So that's how it is. For a non-human creature to gain an immortal soul, the method is so simple, yet so impossibly difficult. At the mention of impossibly difficult, Ariel's expression shifted ever so slightly, an almost imperceptible flicker. In that instant, Ryan felt a searing surge of energy pour into his own soul, slightly increasing his magical power. The wish had been fulfilled. Though it was Aurora who had voiced the answer, it was in essence Ryan, the magician, who had truly resolved the sea hag's lingering question. Another wish of a child of destiny fulfilled. I wonder what reward I'll receive this time, Ryan thought with great anticipation. An immense ocean of knowledge flooded into his mind, etching itself into his memory and soul. It was the art of potioncraft, the knowledge of using various ingredients to brew magical potions. The memories of the sea hag preparing her potions from peculiar materials flashed through his mind. Oh yes, the sea hag's potioncraft. This time, the reward for fulfilling the wish wasn't a new spell. Instead, it was a flawless copy of the sea hag's potioncraft, granted directly to Ryan. Ryan recalled how, in the original story, the sea hag had fulfilled the Little Mermaid's wish by brewing a potion that transformed her tail into human legs. Potion making was evidently one of the sea witch's greatest skills. Now, Ryan had acquired her expertise as his own. Compared to Ryan's initial potion-making abilities from when he had first transmigrated as a magician, the sea hag's knowledge was vastly superior. Yet, the two sets of knowledge didn't conflict. Instead, they complemented and enhanced each other. Ryan realized that by integrating the two, he had now surpassed the sea hag as a master of potioncraft. How peculiar! This time, the reward wasn't a spell that materialized the wish's content. Ryan was initially surprised, but the reason quickly became clear to him. Previously, the wishes he fulfilled had come from ordinary people, the king and queen of the Rose Kingdom, Magician Oz, or the soldier who acquired the tinderbox. None of them had supernatural powers or exceptional skills. Thus, the power of their wishes manifested in its purest form, as magic that embodied the content of their desires. However, when a wish involved a child of destiny with supernatural abilities or extraordinary talents, the power of the wish instead replicated those abilities and talents. This is incredible. Ryan marveled at the wondrous nature of his wish magician physique. He could hardly wait to grant the next fairy tale protagonist's wish. Very well. 2 humans. I'm not sure if I should admire your wisdom or your luck. The sea hag sighed deeply. You've answered my 3 questions, so as promised, I must share everything I know about Maleficent. She plucked a strand of her seaweed-like hair and scraped a bit of slime from her pet toad using a dagger, then crushed them together in a mortar while chanting an incomprehensible spell. Soon, a bubble rose from the mortar, and strange images flickered on its surface, They were patterns of memory. These are my memories of Maleficent. Place the bubble on your forehead, and you'll be able to read them, the sea hag explained. The bubble drifted toward the giant fish that Rhine and Aurora were riding. The fish snapped up the bubble, swallowing a whole. Inside the fish's belly, the two children caught the bubble as casually as picking up a ball from the ground. Rhine tossed a coin into the air, performing a simple divination. Once he confirmed that this bubble held the answers they sought, he stowed it away without immediately reading the memories. Thank you, Sea Witch, for keeping your promise. According to our original agreement, the 3 questions were merely the first payment in exchange for the secrets of the Black Witch Maleficent. Now, tell me, what is the second price we must pay? This price will secure the information about your coven of witches. Ryan was certain that this second payment wouldn't be as simple as answering questions. It might even take a long time to fulfill. Help me gain the recognition of the Sea Kingdom, its king, and the other sea creatures. The sea hag gave a self-deprecating smile. As you know, in this oceanic kingdom, everyone sees me as a nightmare. They avoid me and tell terrifying stories about me as if I were the villain. But all I've ever done is what any merchant would do: charge a price for my goods. Sure, I've studied some black magic, but I've never used it to kill any innocents. Yet, I've been turned into a monster to frighten children. If you can help me earn the recognition of the Sea Kingdom, make the merfolk no longer fear or despise me, I'll reveal everything about that coven of witches. Rhine sighed softly, once again feeling the blazing power of a wish emanating from the sea hag. In the original The Little Mermaid, this sea which had embodied every traditional element of an evil witch: ugliness, strangeness, fearsome pets, and a nightmare-like bone-strewn lair. Yet, she was an honest merchant, not a malevolent villain. In this beautifully poetic tale, there wasn't a single true villain. Every character had their own kindness. Of course, perhaps her image was too fitting for an antagonist, and stories often need enemies. In Disney's adaptation of The Little Mermaid, this sea, which was directly transformed into an evil main villain, Aurora's eyes showed pity. She recalled the fear and disdain the merfolk had expressed when mentioning the sea hag and began to feel some sympathy for this sea witch. Sea witch, this is not a task that can be completed overnight. If someday my companions and I fulfill your wish, I will return to exchange it for your answer. The deal was sealed, and the wish had been accepted. When it would be fulfilled, only time would tell. Ryan turned and pointed in Ariel's direction. Now, it's time for our friend here, Princess Ariel, to make her wish. Outside a crooked house made entirely of bleached sea bones, the sea hag sat upon a throne of rusted anchors and driftwood, feeding a toad and a bloated water snake with the absent-minded gentleness one might offer to a songbird. Unlike the graceful merfolk with their gleaming tails, the sea hag bore a twisted, almost human form. Her limbs were long and sinewy, her hair a tangled mass of green seaweed, and her skin a pallid, sickly blue that shimmered faintly in the gloom like something drowned long ago. When the anglerfish swam into view, its enormous mouth aglow with bioluminescence, revealing the 2 humans inside its transparent belly, the sea hag looked up with a raspy laugh. Well now, humans inside a living lanternfish, still breathing too. What a deliciously bizarre sight. Had Ariel arrived alone, 6th daughter of the Sea King and beloved granddaughter of the Grand Matron, it would have warranted full attention. But today, the sea hag's gaze slid right past her. She was too preoccupied with the spectacle of the strange guests. Ryan stepped forth first, his tone smooth as polished shell. Esteemed sea witch, I come bearing a question, one only a wise woman of your renown might answer. The sea hag squinted. No such thing as free wisdom, boy. If you've heard even half the stories about me, you'll know I never answer without a price. She gestured lazily, causing the water snake to slither down her arm and coil at her feet. State your question. I'll name your payment once I've weighed its worth. Ryan inclined his head with a knowing smile. I seek knowledge of Maleficent, the Black Witch. I've heard you once belonged to the same coven, perhaps still do. Do you know where she resides now? Her castle? her strengths and her weaknesses? He paused, then added calmly, I'd also like to know more about the coven itself. Its members, their locations, how many still walk the world, and how one might survive an encounter with any of them. Silence fell like a curtain. The sea hag froze. Her pale eyes widened, and her hand jerked, knocking the toad from her lap. You lunatic, she croaked. Her voice lost its earlier playfulness, replaced by a sharp edge. She waved her hands wildly, her seaweed hair thrashing in the current. Leave. Leave. You don't know what you're asking. If I tell you anything at all, they'll know. And they'll come for me. There won't even be bones left to bury. Her voice turned low and hoarse. They are ancient, ageless, powerful beyond comprehension. Kingdoms fall with their breath. Mountains crumble beneath their gaze. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Those people, she'd said. Not we. Not my coven. Interesting. He filed the phrasing away, the beginning of a theory forming in his mind. He had expected the sea hag to demand some ridiculous price. His name, his voice, a drop of future blood. But to refuse outright? That was unexpected. Troubling. Even Ariel looked stunned. She'd heard countless cautionary tales of merfolk who came begging for the sea hag's magic. Their wishes always came true, though usually twisted. But never had the sea hag decline a request. And this wasn't even a wish. It was a question. How dangerous was this coven? If the sea hag herself trembled at the thought of betraying them. Ariel looked at Rhine and Aurora with renewed awe and worry. Just who were they? And what had they gotten themselves into? Rhine, unshaken, pressed on. Dear sea witch, your name is whispered across the oceans. You're known not only for your power, but for your integrity. You never refuse a bargain, only demand its price. He leaned in just slightly. Would you now tarnish that legend by turning away two travelers who merely seek the truth? The sea hag didn't reply. Rhine glanced sideways and gently nudged Aurora's foot beneath the glowing fish's belly. She blinked once in understanding. Aurora stepped forward, voice like honey poured into still water. Calm, sweet, and warm. Forgive us, O Lady of the Deep. It was never our intent to insult your wisdom, she said, her voice laced with elegance and sorrow. In all the tales, you are described as the one who never refuses a deal, only asks for what is deserved. And yet, today, she hesitated, feigning confusion. Today I find myself disheartened. Have those stories exaggerated your greatness? The sea hag twitched. Aurora continued, layering admiration beneath her disappointment. Surely, a true mistress of magic does not fear others' wrath, only demands a price worthy of the knowledge she holds. Ariel listened in quiet awe. The girl's voice, so rich, so melodic, it rivaled the famed siren songs of the sea. It made her heart tremble, and I thought no human could match the voice of a mermaid, she thought, cheeks flushing slightly with shame at her earlier arrogance. These two humans, they're not ordinary. One is a silver-tongued scholar, and the other, a golden-voiced enchantress. The sea hag shifted in her seat. Her eyes, once sharp and hostile, now gleamed with reluctant interest. Fine, she muttered. I cannot go against my own legend. Can I? Her eyes flicked to Rhine. Your request is vast. It demands two payments. For the first, information about Maleficent, where she hides, the strength of her dragon form, and what chinks lie in her scales. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You'll pay with truth. I'll ask you 3 questions. If your answers satisfy me, I'll grant what you seek. Ryan inclined his head slightly, intrigued. A riddle game, he thought. Classic, as old as fairy tales themselves. Answer well, and you win wisdom. Fail, and perhaps lose more than your pride. He smiled. Then ask away. The sea hag snorted impatiently. Magic works in strange ways, bound by its own laws and restrictions. If every detail could be explained, understood, and articulated, it would cease to be magic and would become no different from your human mechanisms. Machines and gears functioning with precision. Ariel glanced at the clearly irritated sea hag. It's fine. I accept the risk of death. I was prepared for it before I came to see you. Please give me the potion. I'm not afraid. Though she said this, her face was as pale as snow, walking on legs that felt like knives, and the risk of death if she failed. These are the costs she had to bear. Ariel was willing to endure the former. As for the latter, wasn't it irrelevant as long as she could win the prince's love and obtain an immortal soul? She knew she possessed the most beautiful voice in both the sea and on land. No mermaid could hear her sing without being moved. How much more so for a human? With her enchanting voice, she could captivate the prince and make him pour all his love and soul into her. But don't forget, you still owe me payment, the sea hag declared. For such a precious potion, you must offer me a significant reward. What do I owe you? Ariel asked, her voice filled with anxiety. Only now did she remember that in addition to the potion's painful side effects and the curse placed on her by the world, she still needed to pay the sea hag a fee. And it certainly wouldn't be a small one. Your voice, said the sea hag, for among all the mermaids of the sea kingdom, your voice is the most beautiful. Only such a reward is worthy of my assistance. Princess, I will cut out your tongue and take your voice with magic. From then on, you will no longer be able to speak. Ariel's face turned even paler. Before she could respond, Aurora protested furiously. That's not fair. Ariel's beautiful voice is her way of winning the love of her prince. If she becomes mute, how is she supposed to gain his affection? You know full well that if she fails, she'll turn into sea foam. Yet you demand the very gift she needs to succeed as payment. How is that different from pushing her toward her grave? Aurora turned to Rhine, who had been unusually quiet. Say something, teacher. This is like stripping a duelist of their weapon as the entry fee for a fight where failure means death. This deal isn't fair at all. Rhine, who had been deep in thought, finally spoke. I think the sea hag's terms are perfectly reasonable. Aurora froze, rendered speechless. What? Rhine turned toward Ariel and the sea hag, seemingly taking the latter's side. Respected sea witch, I must disagree with my friend. I believe your demand for a high price is entirely justified. We all knew from the start that seeking your help would come with a heavy cost. If Ariel cannot accept your terms, she is free to decline the deal and look for another merchant who offers a better price, if she can find one. Isn't that right? What are you saying? Aurora exclaimed. She wanted to retort that if the potion to transform Ariel's tail into legs couldn't be obtained from the sea hag, then where else could it be found? But she stopped herself mid-sentence. Aurora suddenly realized what her teacher was about to do. The sea hag, oblivious to Rhine's intentions, only saw two humans arguing. The silver-haired boy had shockingly turned against the golden-haired girl and was firmly siding with her. The sea hag laughed heartily and praised Rhine. I never expected you to be so reasonable, child. You're nothing like your friend. That friend of yours is always complaining, blaming me for everything, as if Ariel should get my help for free. Mermaids and humans alike are always so greedy. They want their wishes fulfilled, but refuse to pay the price. But in this world, when has there ever been such a thing? No great magician or witch grants wishes for free without asking for compensation. Just as you said, this is a voluntary transaction by the mermaid princess. If she doesn't like the price, then I'll be glad to be rid of her. She can find someone else to help her. For a moment, Rhine and the sea hag were in complete agreement. This baffled Ariel, who didn't understand what was going on. Then Rhine turned to her. As I said, this is all voluntary, isn't it? If you want help, you must pay the price. If you don't, then go find someone who will give you the same potion for free. Ariel, her pale face still full of unease, nodded slightly. Despite her sorrow over losing her beautiful voice and becoming mute, she inwardly acknowledged that her human friend was not wrong. It wasn't realistic to expect someone to help her transform into a human for free. Let's proceed with the deal, Ariel said with newfound courage. I accept the terms. Stick out your tongue. Then, the sea hag instructed, producing a sharp blade. She would use the knife to cut out the mermaid princess's tongue and claim the most beautiful voice in both the sea and the land. It's about time you decided, my dear princess. Just as your human friend said, the sea hag sneered. If you wish to fulfill your desire without paying a price, you might as well close your eyes and pray for someone to freely give you a potion that can transform your tail into human legs, with the same potency as the one I concoct. Exactly, Ryan chimed in from behind, his tone resolute. For instance, I could give a potion for free. Ariel could just come to me. Precisely. The sea hag began to agree, but then froze mid-sentence, realizing something was amiss. She turned to Ryan in astonishment, enunciating each word carefully. What did you just say? Human. Ryan smiled and addressed Ariel. Since we're already friends, I can make you a potion for free, one with the same effect as the sea hag's. Well, almost the same. Its side effects will be milder. This isn't funny, the sea hag growled, glaring at Ryan. What nonsense are you spouting? The potion that gives mermaids human legs was invented by me. No one on land or sea, but I can brew it. I believe you. Ryan thought to himself, but what I've copied is your potion craft itself. The sea hag bristled with anger. Stop joking around, human. The potion requires powerful magic. Only someone who knows magic can brew it. Exactly, Ryan said, his smile warm. Did I not mention earlier? I am a magician. Ariel stared at her two human friends in shock. It's true, Aurora confirmed proudly. He's an extraordinarily talented magician, one of the finest in the kingdom we come from. Wait, Ariel's surprise turned to disbelief as she stared at the silver-haired boy. This friend who had accompanied her for so long. He was a magician? In Ariel's understanding, magic was an arcane and mysterious art. In the Sea Kingdom, only the sea hag possessed such knowledge. No wonder these humans had managed to ride a peculiar giant fish to the Sea Kingdom. I always thought you were just a knowledgeable human scholar, Ariel remarked. That's not contradictory, Ryan replied with a grin. Almost all magicians are also well-versed scholars. The sea hag interrupted their conversation impatiently. Fine. With that strange, transparent-bellied fish of yours, I'll concede that you're a magician. But so what? The potion to split a mermaid's tail into human legs is my invention. I've never shared the recipe with anyone. No human or sea creature can replicate its effects except me. Still smiling, Ryan turned to Ariel. Let's test that, shall we? Give me a bit of time, and I'll prepare the potion. As a gift, completely free. Free? Ariel could hardly believe her ears. Yes, it's a gift from friend, Ryan said, crouching inside the belly of the giant fish. With a flourish, he conjured mist from his hands, summoning a cauldron, herbs, a mortar, a pestle, and other necessary tools for brewing a potion. Ariel watched in awe. Is this magic? You've conjured so many things in an instant. Many of the materials and tools Ryan summoned were ones he had touched before while treating commoners in the early days of his transmigration to this world. Thanks to a wish he had once fulfilled, helping a soldier recover the tinderbox, Ryan had gained the ability to summon any object he had previously touched. He began brewing the potion with practiced ease, adding ingredients to the cauldron at intervals. Strange, irregular wisps of steam began to rise from it. The sea hag watched in stunned silence. The recipe, the technique, why do they seem so much like mine? It was almost as if she herself were brewing the potion, yet there were notable differences. Marine ingredients like sea snakes were replaced with terrestrial ones, while silver seaweed, effective only when harvested under moonlight, was substituted with a land herb the sea hag didn't recognize. Ryan had clearly adjusted the recipe, substituting deep-sea ingredients with land-based ones of similar properties. Forest herbs, prairie plants, mountain flora, and even desert vegetation, all far more abundant than the scarce resources of the deep sea, were included. Some original ingredients were omitted entirely, as Ryan's divination revealed them to be not just ineffective but outright toxic. The original recipe had flaws too, he thought. As more peculiar steam rose from the cauldron, the sea hag could tell the potion was nearly complete. To her dismay, it looked and smelled far superior to her best work. Utterly unable to accept this, the sea hag lashed out. Don't think I don't know the secrets behind this potion. To imbue it with magic, you'll need to add a large amount of magically charged blood. Are you seriously willing to donate your own blood for free? With your scrawny body, you'd collapse from blood loss before the potion is even done. Ryan laughed. He drew a knife and nicked a section of soft flesh on the giant fish, letting its blood drip into the cauldron. Unlike the sea hag, who relied on her own blood for brewing, Ryan didn't need to sacrifice himself. The giant fish, a magical creature summoned through the tinderbox's power, had inherently magic-infused blood, and far more of it than Ryan could ever offer. Moments later, the potion boiled. From within, not the crocodile's cries of the original potion, but the melodious song of a nightingale emerged. The potion was ready. It was clear and colorless, resembling pure water. "This can't be real," the sea hag exclaimed in shock. Without even seeing Ariel test the potion, she knew, just from the sound, that Ryan's brew was superior to hers. "Take this potion to the shore and drink it before sunrise," Ryan instructed. "My potion will grant you human legs like the sea hags, but with much gentler side effects." The giant fish carrying Ryan and Aurora spit out the potion bottle. The young magician introduced his creation. "My potion doesn't crudely cut through a mermaid's tail like a sharp knife to split it into legs. Instead, it's like warm sunlight melting the tail gently, reshaping it into legs. This process is painless and harmless. The newly formed legs will be as perfect as those of a natural human, without the constant pain of walking on knives. You'll be able to display your beautiful dance moves freely, enchanting the prince with your grace that surpasses any dancer's." Ryan added with a smile. "The potion's gentle nature comes from a special ingredient, golden sunflowers, which only grow on sunny meadows. Land nobles love wearing them as brooches, but you'd never find such flowers in the sea." By combining the two sets of potion knowledge he now possessed, refining the original recipe with divination, and leveraging the immense magical power he had accumulated over a decade of fulfilling wishes, Ryan's potion far surpassed the sea hag's original concoction. "Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend," Ariel said, her voice brimming with gratitude. Now, she wouldn't have to lose her beautiful voice and become a mute incapable of expressing her love. When Ariel had been ready to accept the sea hag's terms, prepared for her tongue to be severed, she had lamented her fate. Even if she gained the prince's love and an immortal soul, she would never be able to say the words herself. She would forever be a silent figure, gazing at the prince's flawless face, unable to express her joy, sorrow, or affection. Her longing to join human society, a dream she'd held since childhood, would be marred by her inability to communicate, to run freely, to sing joyfully, or to chat and laugh with human friends. But, Ryan reminded her, the curse of the world still remains. That isn't something a revised recipe can fix. When a mermaid is given human form without an immortal soul to match, they incur the curse of the world. If the one you love, the prince, marries someone else, then at the first light of dawn, your heart will shatter and you'll dissolve into foam upon the sea. The only way to break this curse is to obtain an immortal soul. As long as you secure the prince's love, the curse will be dispelled." The Little Mermaid nodded resolutely. With a voice as heavenly as the song of angels and a beauty enhanced by her graceful dancing, how could any human heart resist her? "I will never forget your kindness, my good and generous friends," Ariel said, trembling as she accepted the potion bottle. "But I can't just accept your help for free." As the sea hag said, "How can I take such a great gift without offering something in return? I'm the princess of the mermaids, the most beloved granddaughter of my grandmother. Please tell me what you need, and I'll do my utmost to fulfill it." Arbeta. The moment Ariel took the potion bottle, Ryan felt a powerful surge of wish energy gathering, like a loyal pet eagerly awaiting its master. He knew that once Ariel drank the potion and her wish to gain human legs was fulfilled, this energy would truly become his. "Your wish coming true is the greatest reward for me," Ryan said with a gentle smile. "I don't need anything specific right now, but how about a small token? Could you give me one of your scales as a keepsake before your beautiful tail disappears? With a mermaid scale, I'll be able to learn how to temporarily transform myself and my companions into mermaids, and I can use divination to always know where you are." Ariel immediately complied, offering one of her shimmering scales as a token of gratitude. Ariel plucked a small, shimmering scale from her beautiful tail and presented it to Rhine as a gift. This marked the first time in the history of the Sea Kingdom that a mermaid had gifted something to a human. "My magician friend, I will forever remember your kindness and the favor I owe you today," Ariel declared earnestly, her voice trembling with emotion. "In the future, if you ever need anything, I will repay this kindness with equivalent help." At the story's close, the mermaid princess guided her two human friends on the giant fish, leaving the grotesque coral forest behind. The sea hag watched them disappear into the depths of the sea. "A human magician, huh? Quite impressive indeed," she murmured. Surprisingly, her heart was not weighed down by the loss of a transaction or the failure of a deal. Instead, a wellspring of joy bubbled up within her. Could a magician from the land truly help fulfill the wish I mentioned earlier? The sea hag hadn't forgotten. The human magician had promised to pay a second price to exchange for information about her coven of witches. "Help me gain recognition and acceptance in the Sea Kingdom. Let the mermaids and other sea creatures in these waters no longer fear or despise me." That was the second price I requested. If not for this dream, to become someone as admired and welcomed as Ariel, why would she have ever sought the beautiful voice of the mermaid princess as her price in the first place? "Ariel, are you planning to go ashore and drink the potion now?" Aurora asked, swimming just behind the mermaid princess. "There are still several hours until sunrise. Let's wait a little longer," Ariel replied with a tinge of sadness in her tone. "I want to take one last look at Father's palace and my sister's garden." The mermaid princess knew that once she gained legs, she would likely never have the chance to return to her father, the Grand Matron, or her sisters. Ahead of her lay a daunting challenge. If she failed to win the prince's love, the curse would tear apart her heart, leaving her to dissolve into foam upon the sea. "All right, farewells are always bittersweet. Take your time to say goodbye to the palace and the garden," Rhine agreed. "We'll stay behind you at a distance, watching over you and wishing you well." Ariel and her two companions, riding atop a giant anglerfish, swam a while longer. The Sea King's palace soon came into view. When Ariel left, the palace had been alive with festivities, brightly lit with celebration. Now, as she returned, the glow of the ball had faded. The Sea King's palace lay like a slumbering beast in the deep blue waters, majestic, opulent, and serene. "Father and my sisters must already be asleep," murmured Ariel. Not wanting to disturb them, she slipped quietly into her sister's garden. She intended to pluck a few flowers from the blooming flower beds before leaving as silently as she had come. "My little princess, I've found you at last." Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind her. Turning, Ariel saw the Grand Matron, adorned with countless pearls and shells, flanked by a large group of mermaid attendants. The elderly mermaid's expression was one of extreme worry, but it turned to joy upon spotting Ariel. "Oh my heavens, my beautiful princess! I heard you went to that dreadful coral forest to seek out the hideous sea hag. How could you do such a foolish thing?" The Grand Matron was frantic. She hurried to Ariel's side, her eyes scanning the mermaid princess from her elegant tail to her flowing hair, ensuring that her granddaughter had returned unharmed. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. The old mermaid was so worked up that she failed to notice the anglerfish hovering above her, its translucent belly holding two humans. Why would you go looking for the sea hag? Everyone in the mermaid kingdom grows up hearing her wicked tales, knowing how terrifying she is. Seeking her out for a wish never ends well. The Grand Matron clasped Ariel's hand tightly, as if afraid she might run away again. "You must have seen her, haven't you? But promise me you didn't make a deal with her. Such deals always come at an unimaginable cost." "Don't worry, grandmother," Ariel reassured her, holding her hand in return. I'm fine. The Grand Matron patted her chest, finally relieved. Thank goodness, my little princess. Thank goodness nothing happened to you. Judging by how you look, I'd say you didn't find the sea hag after all. She's so elusive, never staying in one place for long. And in that labyrinthine coral forest, finding her bony shack is no easy task. The Grand Matron concluded that Ariel must have been so frightened by the raging whirlpools, the grotesque coral shapes, and the skeletal remains hanging from the coral trees that she had run straight back home without meeting the sea hag. Promise me, my little princess, that you'll never go there again. What wish could you have that your father and I cannot fulfill for you? The Grand Matron stroked Ariel's hair, its silky strands as smooth as flowing water. No, grandmother, I did find the sea hag, and I spoke with her at length, Ariel admitted. She's not as terrifying as the stories make her out to be. Her words shocked the Grand Matron so much that she nearly shook loose the oyster decorations on her tail. Really? My little princess, did she demand a price from you? Did she harm you? Ariel smiled. There was supposed to be a price, but in the end, I didn't make a deal with her. A kind human friend helped me instead. He's a good-hearted magician who granted my wish without asking for anything in return. Ariel didn't elaborate on what her wish was. It was a challenge she would face alone. A human friend? The Grand Matron was stunned. How could a mermaid possibly befriend a human? In the history of the Mermaid Kingdom, such a thing was unheard of. Look, there they are. Ariel pointed behind her grandmother. The anglerfish swam closer, its body swaying gently. Inside its transparent belly were two humans, a silver-haired boy and a golden-haired girl. You must be the humans rumored to have come to the Mermaid Kingdom. A human scholar and his attendant, I believe, the Grand Matron said, recalling what she'd heard earlier. Her shock was evident. You're the ones who helped Ariel? Ryan nodded politely and greeted the Grand Matron of the Sea Kingdom. Well, no matter what, since you've helped Ariel, you are now my friends and honored guests of the Deep Sea Palace. From now on, as long as you are in these waters, the Mermaid Kingdom welcomes you. The Grand Matron declared, This is my word as the Grand Matron, and it will always hold true. The mermaid attendants who had followed her began whispering among themselves. Isn't the Grand Matron the one who always said that the worlds of merfolk and humans should remain separate? Yes. Just earlier in the palace, she was against the Sea King summoning these humans. Well, that's just how she is. You know how much she dotes on the mermaid princesses, especially Princess Ariel. She's her pride and joy. Exactly. The Grand Matron is usually so stern, but she becomes a completely different person when it comes to Princess Ariel. The Grand Matron, full of warmth, invited Rhine and Aurora. Friends, isn't this a coincidence? I heard that my son, the king of this sea, was planning to invite you to his palace as guests. It's late now, but when the sun rises and its warm light filters through the sea, illuminating this splendid palace, you must come back. Rhine and Aurora smiled as they accepted the Grand Matron's invitation. With her concerns eased, the Grand Matron departed. Ariel swam closer to the two and thanked them again, preparing to bid farewell and ascend to the surface world with her potion. If you encounter any difficulties while pursuing the prince, feel free to come to me for help, Rhine said. He handed Ariel a silver mirror and explained, I've imbued this mirror with magic. Speak your troubles into it, and no matter how many kingdoms lie between us, I'll hear them. Since leaving the Rose Kingdom, Rhine had not heard anyone reciting his name in prayer, a limitation of his ability to sense such invocations over great distances. On this vast continent, his usual methods of communication were insufficient. Thus, he specially prepared this magical gift for Ariel. Thank you both. I will never forget you, Ariel said, her gratitude overwhelming as she waved goodbye and swam toward the surface world. Moments later, Rhine felt Ariel's wish energy flow into his soul like a stream merging with the ocean. It was clear that above the water, the mermaid princess had now acquired human legs. As he absorbed the wish energy, a beautiful melody softly reached his ears. The song, reminiscent of the ebb and flow of tides, surged through his veins and fused with his soul. It was Ariel's mermaid song. This gift, received as compensation for fulfilling her wish, came with two powerful effects. The song's unmatched beauty could stir the hearts of anyone who heard it, whether on land or beneath the waves. It had the ability to soothe marine creatures. Upon hearing the song, sea creatures would feel drawn to Rhine and regard him as a trusted ally. He could even command them to aid him. For example, asking fish to point out swift currents or directing sea beasts to tow ships. Of course, as a magician, Rhine didn't need to sing the song himself. He could use magic to play it instead. A mere clap against a seashell would make it sing. Tossing a harp into the air would produce this extraordinary melody. This ability is equally useful for performances or sea voyages. How ironic, Rhine mused. In the end, my payment is the same as what the sea hag demanded, Ariel's song. The only difference was that, as the magician fulfilling her wish, the wish energy itself paid the price on Ariel's behalf. Aurora's voice brought Rhine out of his thoughts. By the way, teacher, although we've obtained information about the Black Witch Maleficent, can we delay seeking her out? I want to witness Ariel gain the prince's love and earn an immortal soul before we set out again. Of course, Rhine replied. Even if we found Maleficent now, you wouldn't be able to defeat that dragon. Besides, I have plans of my own. Undoubtedly, obtaining an immortal soul was Ariel's greater wish. Rhine, too, wanted to see that wish fulfilled before departing. He looked forward to seeing how Ariel, retaining her beautiful voice and speaking ability, freed from pain, and able to showcase her graceful dance, would fare in the story to come. Aurora gazed at the deep, almost black waters overhead. A touch of melancholy entered her voice. I feel a little sorry for the merfolk. What for? Rhine asked. I truly hope Ariel succeeds in winning the love of that handsome prince. But even if she does and gains an immortal soul, it will only save herself. All the other merfolk in this sea will still eventually dissolve into foam, unknown and unnoticed. Aurora sighed. This task is already so difficult for the most cherished of the mermaid princesses. How could it be possible for the countless ordinary merfolk? Having spent many years with Rhine, being raised by this teacher from beyond the world, Aurora had grown accustomed to viewing matters from novel perspectives. Rhine smiled. That's an interesting line of thought. You, the heir to a kingdom, grew up unaware of your identity. A child who played with ordinary commoners, now destined to become a queen, will inevitably think differently from one raised in a grand palace. When you start to see the many behind the individual, when you consider the broader picture, you're learning to become a great ruler. That's one of the purposes of this journey. Although Rhine appeared only slightly older than the girl beside him, he always tried to act more mature in moments like this, embodying the role of a sage and mentor. So, what are you implying, teacher? Aurora asked, already suspecting the answer. Let's look forward to the conclusion of this tale, Ariel's story, and the fate of this sea kingdom. Rhine tilted his chin upward, his gaze piercing the heavy, dark blue water overhead. In just 2 hours, the dawn's light would pierce through the deep sea. The sun would shine equally upon the kingdoms of men on land and the world beneath the waves. The sun rose. Sunlight penetrated the sea, illuminating the Sea King's palace. To witness the dawn in the mermaid kingdom was a breathtaking sight no human could see in a lifetime. The light, softened by the water, painted the entire sea in hues of rose. The Sea King's palace slowly awakened in the serene beauty of morning. As planned, the Grand Matron led Rhine and Aurora, who had finished studying the intelligence on Maleficent, into the Sea King's palace. When the anglerfish with its transparent belly, carrying 2 humans, swam through the palace gates, the scene astonished the nobles gathered inside. Incredible! They must be the first humans in history to enter the mermaid kingdom. Even the most self-assured mermaid scholars had to admit that nothing like this had ever occurred. This is like a fairy tale version of a submarine. I bet they've never seen anything like it. Rhine thought as he peered through the translucent belly of the fish, observing the wide-eyed merfolk outside. The most surprised of all, however, was the Sea King himself. What shocked him wasn't the human's peculiar arrival. His subordinates had already described it in detail, but the fact that his own mother was personally escorting the two guests. Just last night, hadn't she vehemently opposed any interaction between humans and merfolk, or between the worlds of land and sea? These two humans are friends of my granddaughter, Princess Ariel, and naturally, friends of the Mermaid Kingdom. The Grand Matron introduced them to the nobles. She gestured proudly at Rhine, adding, "Moreover, this human boy is a skilled magician." A magician? From the human world? The nobles were even more amazed. Rhine demonstrated his abilities on the spot. First, he brought sculptures in the palace to life. Then he transformed the anglerfish's translucent belly into various land animals. This is a bird. This is a horse. This is a deer. This is a cow. This is a sheep. This is a rabbit. The bizarre and exotic land creatures left the nobles and Ariel's sisters staring in disbelief. The royal court's painters hurried to capture the appearances of these strange animals, sketching them before the images disappeared. Honored magician and wise sage, everyone has many questions about the surface world, said the Sea King. Thus, Rhine and Aurora began answering the nobles' curious inquiries about the land. They shared stories of the surface world, describing the countless kingdoms across the western continent and recounting legends from the distant east, from cruel sultans to the emperors of the Eastern Empire. Rhine even produced a mirror to project images of these tales. As a sage of the Rose Kingdom, Rhine's knowledge surpassed that of most people in the world. The nobles were astonished to learn that the surface world was even more diverse than their oceanic realm. It had mountains, forests, deserts, grasslands, snow-covered tundras, and lifeless wastelands. Just as Aurora had been awed by the beauty of the undersea world when she first saw it, the merfolk were similarly mesmerized by the wonders of the surface world. The palace scholars worked tirelessly that day. Armed with pens crafted from octopus ink sacs, they recorded every word spoken by Rhine and Aurora, running the poor creatures dry of ink. The Mermaid Kingdom's millennia-old records of the human world paled in comparison to what the two children shared that day. What a shame, the Sea King sighed. The land has such remarkable beauty, yet we merfolk cannot form friendships with humans. Humans seem to fear and despise us. Sometimes, when sailors spot merfolk, they attack us, firing poisoned arrows at my people. Having learned the context, Rhine couldn't help but chuckle. It wasn't as though merfolk were entirely blameless. Singing about the sea's beauty in front of human ships just before storms was hardly conducive to goodwill. Rhine explained the situation in detail, emphasizing how human sailors feared the sea's dangers, the enormous waves and fierce storms. To ensure a safe voyage, every sailor offers prayers to the sea gods, hoping to avoid being swallowed by the ocean. But to humans, either the merfolk's songs summon the storms, or their singing lures sailors into perilous waters, causing ships to wreck on reefs or sink in whirlpools. In either case, merfolk are seen as harbingers of disaster, not as heralds of storms. The Sea King sighed in understanding. Alas, the lack of understanding between our worlds has caused such misinterpretations. The once imposing monarch now wore an expression akin to his daughter's, a wistful longing for a brighter future. If one day humans and the creatures of the sea could understand each other and live in harmony, how wonderful that would be. But we cannot go ashore. We can only linger at the coast, unable to venture inland. Aurora froze, recalling her own melancholic thoughts from the previous night and Rhine's words. Could it be? A vague suspicion began to form in her mind about the direction of this story's conclusion. The silver-haired boy in the anglerfish's belly smiled and said, "It's not impossible. Your Majesty's youngest daughter, Princess Ariel, is already attempting this. She fell in love with a human prince and sought his love and an immortal soul. To that end, she approached the only witch in your kingdom, requesting a potion to grant her legs. The sea hag wanted to take your daughter's voice as payment. I happened to be there and offered Princess Ariel a superior potion for free. Rhine briefly recounted the events of the previous night. The Grand Matron, who had been beaming moments ago, now turned pale. Heavens! My little princess has gone to the land? How could she do such a foolish thing? I warned her to abandon her silly fantasies about being with humans. I thought she had long forgotten about it. What are we going to do now? The Sea King and Ariel's sisters, the other 5 mermaid princesses, were just as distressed. Upon hearing that Ariel would turn into sea foam if she failed, they became as anxious as ants on a hot pan, fretting among themselves. Rhine was struck by their reactions. Although the original story never depicted the family's response to Ariel's departure, their desperation at the end, when the sisters traded their hair with the sea hag for a way to save Ariel, showed how deeply they cared for her. Honored magician, since you can transform Ariel into a human, surely you can turn her back? This is too dangerous. Bring her back to us. We can pay you with pearls from the sea or our beautiful hair, whatever you want. The Sea King, the Grand Matron, and the mermaid princesses surrounded Rhine, pleading for his help. Rhine envisioned a scene left out of the original story. Ariel's family, desperate after her departure, turned to the sea hag for help, her sisters sacrificing their hair to save her. Your Majesty, I can indeed do that, Rhine said, but I don't recommend doing so right now. As the Sea King and the mermaid princesses looked at him in confusion, Rhine explained, I believe Princess Ariel's attempt isn't just about her alone. Her venture to the land, though fraught with danger, might also pave the way for the future of the mermaid kingdom. The Sea King looked puzzled. What do you mean? The former sage of the Rose Kingdom raised his voice with passion and conviction. Consider this. If Princess Ariel succeeds, wouldn't that prove that merfolk and humans can share love and build lasting relationships? This could be the foundation for friendship between the kingdoms of the sea and the land. And it just so happens that the lovers in this tale are a prince and a princess, a match made in heaven. Your Majesty, you know the secret of the immortal soul. If Ariel succeeds, it will set a shining precedent. When Ariel and the prince marry, it must be known to all that she hails from the mermaid kingdom. Aside from physiological differences, merfolk are no different from humans. With the power of magic, the barriers between the sea and land will cease to exist. If I can grant merfolk legs to walk on land, I can also transform humans into merfolk, allowing them to explore the sea. From then on, any ordinary mermaid in these vast seas could follow Ariel's example, find love among humans, and gain an immortal soul. The prince's eyes dimmed slightly. As expected, what his father cared about was still his own reputation and political needs. This amnesiac girl, blessed with the world's most beautiful voice, was just another tool to him. At just 15 years old, Prince Eric disliked those adult and pragmatic matters. He loved hunting, sailing, reading romantic novels, epic tales, and fantastical stories of mythical creatures. He yearned for the freedom of adventure and the allure of romance. Yet, he had to admit that the foundations of the world were precisely those adult and pragmatic things, not a teenager's romantic fantasies. As the prince of the Western Asia Kingdom, he knew that one day he would become like his father, abandoning the ideals of today, just as his father had once abandoned his own. For instance, Eric was aware that his father was seeking protection from Enderland, hoping to form an alliance with a northern superpower. Enderland possessed the most formidable naval force among the Western nations. It could protect the Western Asia Kingdom's fisheries and maritime trade from pirate raids. Though most pirates in the region were themselves royal privateers of Enderland, granted letters of marque by their monarch. Common folk often whispered that Enderland was a nation of robbers, stirring unrest wherever they went. Just months ago, they had invaded the Rose Kingdom, already in turmoil due to rumors. However, for unknown reasons, they had been thwarted. Even so, the alliance had to move forward. Politics should not be tainted by personal preferences or emotions. Quick, my child. Next, we must use every means available to uncover the origins of this amnesiac girl and the source of her magnificent voice, the king exclaimed excitedly. A girl who can sing with such a heavenly voice cannot have an ordinary background. In front of his bewildered son, the king began imagining all sorts of scenarios. If this girl belongs to the court of a powerful king or emperor, we will return her as a token of friendship and goodwill between our nations. This will be an invaluable bargaining chip at the negotiation table. But if her background is more modest, she can remain and serve our court long-term. That would be even better. We must also discover the source of her beautiful voice. It is so extraordinary, far beyond human limits. It cannot be natural. Perhaps, somewhere in this world, there exists a magical spring. If one drinks from it, anyone could sing as beautifully as she does. If our kingdom finds this precious treasure first, other nations will offer us gold for its location. Prince Eric lowered his head. He felt that no matter the scenario, it seemed to diverge from his original intention. After all, he had only wanted to help the girl recover her past. Eric couldn't help but wonder. What if the girl's voice wasn't so breathtaking, but just ordinary? Would fate have unfolded differently? But his father's was unshakable. Orders were already being issued. The king commanded his capable subordinates to employ every method to uncover the girl's identity. One clever minister proposed. This amnesiac girl seems to have been found unconscious by the shore, likely due to a shipwreck. She may be from a distant land. This continent is vast, with hundreds of nations in the west alone, each as large as ours. Finding her origins through conventional means would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Instead, we could turn to magic. In the Northern Rose Kingdom, the former court advisor was a powerful magician who once used his magic to protect the king's life. Some say Enderland's failure to conquer the Rose Kingdom months ago was also due to this magician. Even if we can't hire such a skilled magician, we could recruit a talented diviner to use fortune-telling or astrology to uncover this girl's past. The king was overjoyed but soon looked troubled. How can we ensure the diviners who apply are genuinely capable and not frauds? The clever minister suggested. We could hold a competition, inviting diviners from across the kingdom and even from abroad. The one with the most accurate results will be tasked with uncovering the girl's origins. If the divination proves effective, we might even consider appointing them as a royal advisor. The king accepted this advice and offered a handsome reward for the best diviner. Whether they were citizens of the Western Asia Kingdom or foreign experts, all were welcome to participate. The prince, feeling melancholic, walked hand in hand with Ariel under the radiant hues of the evening sky, watching the crimson sun dip below the horizon. My father will soon recruit diviners across the kingdom to uncover your origins and the source of your beautiful voice, Eric sighed. Also, the Enderland delegation will visit our kingdom soon. My father wants you to sing for them. He is trying to form an alliance with Enderland and hopes to impress them in every way possible. The prince knew that the girl had now become a tool for his father. Ariel, however, didn't seem to mind. She mustered her courage and asked, "Do you love me? I don't care who I sing for, as long as I can stay with you forever. If your father values my voice so much that he allows me to remain in the palace and stay by your side, that would be perfect." The Little Mermaid understood she had to become the prince's wife. Otherwise, she could never gain an immortal soul. The curse would crush her heart and dissolve her into sea foam. The prince held her hand, his dark eyes gazing into Ariel's ocean blue ones. He realized it was time to reveal the truth. You know, you're so much like the girl who saved me that day, but not entirely the same. There are differences between you two. That was not long ago. I was sailing when an awful storm struck. Seasoned sailors often say such storms are called forth by wicked mermaids or luring ships into danger. No, it's not true. Ariel screamed in her heart. Only now did she realize how humans perceived her kind. If the prince knew I was a mermaid, Ariel wondered, would he despise me, fear me, hate me for deceiving him? The prince continued, I fell into the sea, but the waves pushed me ashore. There a young woman saved me. In my half-conscious state, I vaguely remembered her face. Of all the people I've met, you resemble her the most. That's why, among all the beautiful women in this palace, I'm drawn to you. But I know you're not her. Your voice is much more beautiful than hers. Ariel's heart shattered. She remembered the storm. The prince wasn't swept ashore by the waves. She had saved him, carrying his unconscious body to the shore. From the sea, she had watched as a human girl woke the prince. What he truly remembered was that girl, not her. Oh no, Prince Eric doesn't even know I saved him. Ariel thought, is it destiny's cruel joke? Why do I resemble the human girl so much? Unwilling to accept this, Ariel asked, so, am I just a substitute? A replacement for the girl you truly long for, because I resemble her so much? The prince remained silent. The king of the Western Asia kingdom watched as the prince warmly smiled at Ariel and invited her to sing in the court, yawning lazily. Ah, young people always fill their heads with romantic fantasies, he mused. Let an unknown girl sing in my court? Ridiculous. Let it be for now. Once Eric gets older, he'll look back on this and realize how foolish these feelings are. He didn't care what woman captured his son's interest, as long as it didn't blossom into true love. The king knew well that royal marriages were never about love, just like his own union with his wife, the current queen. In this world, there are far more important things than love. According to the long-established plan, his son was destined to marry the princess of Enderland. Of course, love had nothing to do with this. It was purely a matter of geopolitics. The Western Asia kingdom relied heavily on maritime trade and fishing, and it needed Enderland's naval dominance for protection. After receiving the prince's permission, Ariel stepped to the center of the grand hall. I dedicate this song to His Majesty the King, Her Majesty the Queen, and His Highness Prince Eric. The king lazily closed his eyes, basking in the warm afternoon sunlight, paying no attention to this farce. If this stray girl Eric picked up can sing even half as well as the court singers, I'll toss out a couple of compliments to make Eric happy, he thought. Eric is nearly 16. His time for youthful fantasies is running out. He'll soon learn what it truly means to bear the responsibilities of a ruler and the future king of the Western Asia kingdom. The prince, on the other hand, looked at Ariel with an expectant smile, already crafting 100 ways to praise this mysterious girl in his mind. No matter how she sang, he wouldn't hold back his words of admiration. As for whether his father liked the girl's voice, it didn't matter. In this world, it was enough that he alone appreciated it. Ariel began to sing. The moment she sang her first note, the king opened his eyes. He felt his soul tremble. It was as if cool, crystal-clear water poured over him, cleansing his heart and spirit. The king glanced at his wife on the throne beside him. The queen of the Western Asia kingdom was wide-eyed and trembling. It was only then that the king realized his own expression mirrored hers. Ariel sang with rapture. Her heavenly voice filled the palace, echoing endlessly among the beams. Everyone was spellbound, the king and queen on their thrones, the prince who only hoped to see her sing, and even the court singers who prided themselves on having the most beautiful voices. All their expressions froze. Every soul in the palace heard the song, and all forgot their duties. The nobles and aristocrats who were chatting and laughing fell silent, their raised goblets suspended midair. Servants cleaning the hallways paused, brooms halted in hand. A maid carrying milk past the grand hall stopped, listening quietly to the melody wafting from within. Even the servant pouring wine into the prince's goblet froze mid-motion, oblivious as the golden liquid overflowed. Overhead, migratory birds flying past the palace heard the song and changed their course, circling above the royal court. Even miles away, people noticed the strange sight of hundreds of birds spiraling over the Western Asia kingdom's palace. When the song ended, the enraptured crowd finally regained their senses. "Forgive me, Your Highness." The servant pouring wine noticed the spilled liquid and panicked. Prince Eric, however, didn't care in the slightest. He clapped fervently for the girl's voice. Before Ariel had sung, the prince had woven countless compliments in his mind. Yet now that she had finished, he couldn't recall a single one. The echo of her breathtaking melody lingered in his mind, like an eraser wiping away all other thoughts. He could only clap, harder and harder, until his hands ached, burned, and turned red. Tears welled in his eyes and fell onto his stinging palms, into the spilled wine, creating ripples. The prince glanced at his father. The king sat frozen, eyes vacant, like a statue unable to return to reality. Well, wasn't her singing beautiful? Eric asked. All the ornate words Eric had planned were forgotten. Human language seemed inadequate to describe the mermaid princess's voice. He resorted to the simplest, most primal terms. The king shivered. Beautiful wasn't even close to enough. As the ruler of the Western Asia Kingdom, he had heard countless talented singers and renowned musicians, so many that he'd grown numb to beauty. But today, the king realized that the most exquisite melodies he had heard before were mere flickering candlelight compared to this girl's radiant sun. Even the eerie tales told by sailors of mermaids, luring ships to ruin with their enchanting songs paled in comparison to the voice of this girl before him. "Where did you find this amnesiac girl?" the king asked, trembling. The prince recounted how he had discovered Ariel on the seashore. A girl with such an extraordinary voice couldn't possibly be obscure, the king declared. All the kings and emperors across this continent will vie to have her as a court singer. "This is wonderful," the king said, clapping Eric on the shoulder. "You've done well to bring back a girl with the most beautiful voice in the world." Hearing his father's praise, the prince felt as if he were in a dream, the scene before him utterly surreal. In his mind, he had imagined himself as the only one captivated by her voice, his father watching coldly from the sidelines, offering at most a perfunctory remark. Now, it was his father who was first to extol the virtues of this mysterious girl. Seeing his son dazed, the king laughed. "Make good use of her voice. When foreign dignitaries and royals visit our kingdom, let her sing. The Inderland delegation will be arriving soon. While discussing your marriage, let's ensure they know that the Western Asia Kingdom's court boasts the most beautiful singer on the continent. This will be our pride. Even the most unyielding negotiators will soften after hearing her magical voice. They won't be able to eat or sleep, her song haunting their minds for months. Faced with this voice, even the toughest diplomats will temper their claws." Prince Eric's eyes dimmed slightly. As expected, his father cared only for appearances and political expedience. This amnesiac girl with the most beautiful voice in the world was just another tool. At 15, Eric disliked the adult, pragmatic matters of life. He loved hunting, sailing, reading romantic novels, grand epics, and fantastic tales of magical creatures. He yearned for freedom, adventure, and love. But he couldn't deny that the foundation of the world rested on those adult, pragmatic concerns, not the romantic dreams of youth. As the prince of the Western Asia Kingdom, he knew he was destined to become like his father, letting go of today's ideals, just as his father had once been a boy like him. For example, Eric knew his father was seeking an alliance with Inderland, a northern powerhouse with the most formidable navy in the Western lands. They could protect the Western Asia Kingdom's fisheries and maritime trade from pirates. Even though most pirates in these waters were, in fact, Inderland's royal privateers, operating under crown-issued letters of marque. The people often said Inderland was a bandit state, preying on the weak and stirring up war wherever it went. Just months ago, Inderland invaded the Rose Kingdom, which had fallen into chaos due to rumors, though something had stopped them from succeeding. Even so, the alliance negotiations had to continue. Politics could not be tainted by personal likes and dislikes. "Hurry, my son. We must do everything we can to uncover this amnesiac girl's origins and the secret behind her extraordinary voice," the king said excitedly. "A girl with such heavenly music in her soul cannot come from an ordinary background." The king began speculating wildly in front of his bewildered child. "If she belongs to the court of a powerful king or emperor, we'll return her as a token of friendship and goodwill between nations. This could be a crucial bargaining chip at the negotiation table. If her identity is more common, it means she can serve our court for years to come. That would be even better. We also need to learn the source of her extraordinary voice. Such transcendent music far exceeds human limits. It can't possibly be natural. Perhaps somewhere in this world, There's a magical spring. If anyone drinks from it, they could sing as beautifully as she does. If our kingdom is the first to discover such a treasure, it would be invaluable. Many nations would trade gold for it. Prince Eric lowered his head. No matter the scenario, it seemed to stray far from his original intent. He had only wanted to help this girl recover her past. Eric couldn't help but wonder. If this amnesiac girl's singing had been ordinary, would her fate have been different? But his father's will was absolute, and the king had already begun issuing commands. He ordered his capable ministers to uncover the girl's origins by any means. One clever minister offered a suggestion. This amnesiac girl likely washed ashore after a shipwreck, so she's probably from a distant land. The continent is vast. There are hundreds of nations as large as our Western Asia kingdom in the West alone. Using conventional methods to find her origins would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. We could turn to magic. In the Northern Rose Kingdom, their former royal advisor was a powerful mage who once saved the king's life with his magic. It's said that Enderland's failure to conquer the Rose Kingdom months ago was partly due to this mage. Even if we can't hire such a skilled magician, we could enlist a capable diviner. Let them use scrying or astrology to uncover the girl's origins. The king beamed at the idea, but soon frowned. But how will we ensure the diviners we recruit aren't frauds? The clever minister proposed. We can hold a competition to recruit diviners from across the kingdom and beyond. The one who provides the most accurate predictions will investigate this girl's origins. If their divination proves effective, we might even consider hiring them as a royal advisor. The king approved this plan. He offered a generous reward to attract the finest diviners. People from the Western Asia Kingdom and beyond were invited to participate. Later, as the prince strolled with Ariel under the radiant sunset, he held her hand with a hint of melancholy. My father is organizing a nationwide search for diviners to uncover your origins and the source of your beautiful voice, Eric said with a sigh. And soon, the Enderland delegation will visit. My father wants you to sing for them. He's pursuing an alliance with Enderland, using every means to win their favor. The prince knew the girl had become a tool in his father's grand plans. But Ariel didn't mind. She summoned her courage and asked, "Do you love me? I don't care who I sing for, as long as I can stay with you forever. If your father treasures my voice and allows me to remain in the palace with you, that would be perfect." The mermaid princess understood that she must become the prince's wife to gain an immortal soul. Otherwise, the curse would crush her heart and dissolve her into sea foam. The prince clasped her hand and gazed into her sea-blue eyes with his dark ones. Today, he realized he had to speak the truth. "Do you know? You look so much like the girl who saved me, but not completely. There are many differences between you. That happened not long ago. I was sailing when a terrible storm struck. Sailors say storms like that are called by evil mermaids or lure unsuspecting ships into dangerous waters. No, it wasn't like that." Ariel screamed internally. Only now did she realize how humans perceive her kind. If the prince knew I was a mermaid, would he scorn me? Fear me? Hate me? Blame me for deceiving him? Ariel wondered. The prince continued. "I was swept into the sea, but luckily the waves carried me to shore. There a young woman saved me. In my half-conscious state, I vaguely remembered her appearance. Of everyone I've ever met, you resemble her the most. That's why, among all the beautiful women in this palace, I'm so drawn to you. But I'm certain you're not her. Your voice is different, more beautiful than hers." Ariel's heart shattered. She remembered that storm. The prince wasn't carried ashore by waves. She had saved him and brought him to land. From a distance, she had watched as a young human woman awakened the unconscious prince. The prince remembered only the one who had roused him, not the mermaid who saved him. Oh no, Prince Eric doesn't know it was me who saved him. Ariel thought, am I just a substitute for that human girl? What a cruel twist of fate. She couldn't resist asking, "So, I'm just a stand-in for the girl you truly long for? Because I resemble her." The prince fell silent. This scene played out in a mirror, visible to Rhine, Aurora, the crowned Sea King, the Grand Matron, and the other mermaid princesses in the underwater palace. It's my turn now, Rhine said. I'll pose as a diviner and answer the Western Asia Kingdom's call, revealing Ariel's true identity. The king of the Kingdom of West Asia set the test himself and recruited well-known fortune-tellers. This has caused an uproar among the people. People who claim to be fortune-tellers from all over the country, and even many foreign countries came. Some of them call themselves wizards, some call themselves prophets, some call themselves fortune-tellers, and some call themselves astrologers. Some of them are civilians, and some are nobles or advisors of nobles. No matter what their names are, they are good at playing with crystal balls, tarot cards, tea leaves, tortoise shells, and the like, saying some mysterious words, claiming to be able to see the future and past of others and talk to the dead. Hundreds of people wearing cloaks, hoods, and mysterious clothes gathered in the capital. It was a novel sight. The person in charge of presiding over this examination was Prince Eric. He took over this task from his father and was responsible for selecting the most accurate fortune-teller among all the fortune-tellers. The fact is he wanted to know the life experience of the amnesiac girl more than anyone else. By the way, if there is such a powerful fortune-teller, the prince also wanted to ask him or her, who is the girl who saved him in the shipwreck? The lifesaver who looks like the amnesiac girl. He was looking forward to the answers to these two questions. While the prince was looking forward to it, Ariel in the palace was very scared. She didn't know how many fortune-tellers from all over the world were liars and how many had real talents. If the prince knew that I was a mermaid from the sea, what would he do to me? Will he still hold my hand like before to watch the sunset and sunrise? Will he regard me as an inhuman monster? Because humans are so afraid of and disgusted with mermaids. Today, Ryan also put on a light-colored robe and a wizard hat, and his image was a free and easy wandering magician. He also mixed in a large group of applicants. Aurora followed the boy as the magician's bodyguard. Such two cute and beautiful children undoubtedly attracted the attention of the adults around them. Two little friends, what are you doing here? The guard in charge of registration asked the two children who were dressed strangely. There is an important matter here today. You can't come in casually. Ryan smiled and handed over an envelope. Please take a look. The guard didn't understand, but still opened the envelope and carefully read the contents and corresponding supporting documents. After a few seconds, the guard's expression changed suddenly. He saluted Ryan and Aurora respectfully and made an invitation gesture to them in the surprised eyes of others. Please come in, Sage of the Kingdom of Rose. The guard said in surprise, I have always heard of your legend and heard that you were traveling on the continent. I didn't expect that you would travel here. Under the confused and shocked gazes of the adults around them, the guards escorted Ryan and Aurora to the venue. The prince stood in the square in front of the palace and began to preside over the assessment competition. The first level was the simplest. There were 10 upside-down bowls on the table of each fortune-teller, and only one had a gold coin hidden above the bottom. The contestants had to blindfold themselves and find the upside-down bowl with the gold coins without touching the bowls. It took Ryan only 1 second to find the upside-down bowl with the gold coins, as if he knew where the gold coins were from the beginning. The other contestants were still thinking hard or muttering strange words and asking different gods for help. Such a simple test question eliminated the vast majority of weirdos, and only 1 in 10 contestants could advance to the next level. It turns out that they were just guessing, Aurora exclaimed. From a statistical point of view, this is the case. Ryan, who had simply completed the task, said, as a magician, Ryan knew that even among real magicians, not every one of them knew divination and prophecy. Most of those who could participate in the competition were probably just guys who were proficient in deception. Even if there were a few contestants who had real talents and skills, how could they compare with him who had mastered the power of prophecy for many years? The second question was much more difficult. A court painter would stay in a closed little room, improvise, and paint a picture alone. And the fortune teller in the open space had to copy that picture out of thin air. The prince went in and out of the small room, sometimes looking at the progress of the court painter's painting and sometimes looking at the paintings of the contestants outside. The court painter picked up the brush and soon drew a beautiful rose in the middle of the drawing paper. The prince went out to see what the contestants had drawn. It was very different from what the court painter had drawn. Some drew mountains, some drew portraits, and some drew war scenes. At this time, the prince noticed that a table and chair were empty, and there was no one on the stool. The contestants didn't know where to go. The painting showed a man courting a woman, and the former was holding a bright rose in his hand, occupying the most central position of the entire painting. "Oh my God, this is so similar," the prince exclaimed in his heart. "Where are the people here?" the prince asked. It turned out that a silver-haired child was sitting here. He said he was going to take a nap and didn't want to waste time here. So he left early and left only a painting here. The people around answered. The prince looked closely and saw that there was indeed a painting on the table. The painting showed a man courting a woman, and the former was holding a bright rose in his hand, occupying the most central position of the entire painting. "Oh my God, this is so similar," the prince exclaimed in his heart. The flower in the painting is almost the same as the one made by the court painter. The only pity is that the other parts are wrong. The court painter only painted a flower instead of a courtship scene. The prince couldn't help but feel sorry for the contestant. If he hadn't added unnecessary parts, he would have advanced. With this thought in mind, Prince Eric walked back to the small room where the court painter was. When he saw that there was still a delicate rose on the drawing paper, the prince breathed a sigh of relief. "Have you finished it?" the prince asked. "No, not yet, my highness. I think the picture is too empty now," said the painter. In the next half an hour, under the surprised eyes of his royal highness, the court painter added more details on the four sides of the painting. Finally, the court painter completed this painting. It was the one the prince had seen before. "Have you told anyone what you're going to paint today?" the prince asked in disbelief. "Of course not, my lord. It was only when you entered the room half an hour ago that I felt that the painting was too empty and wanted to add some details to it. And before a painting is officially completed, even I don't know what it will look like in the end." The painter said, "Wow, that contestant. People claimed it was a child. Notice the painting even before the painter himself, just as the reader understands the future development of art sooner than the artist." The prince was astonished. This time, only 2 people passed the level. Ryan was of course one of them, and the only contestant who finished the painting earlier than the painter. "Why did the copy you copied appear earlier than the original?" the prince asked the child who returned to his seat. "If you don't know the result before it starts, how can it be considered a prophecy?" Ryan said, "Can you see so clearly in other things, such as paintings?" The prince asked excitedly. "Such a fortune-teller must be able to see the life experience of the amnesiac girl and who saved her in the first place. I can't guarantee it. The more important the fate, the more branches and possibilities there are. We can only know vague fragments." Ryan answered truthfully. Ryan noticed that the other qualifier seemed to be a magician as well. He had an exaggerated eagle nose and a shifty look. His facial features were different from those of the others, with a more distinct exotic style, and his skin was also dark brown. "He seems to look different from the others," Ryan asked the guard beside him. "Yes, he seems to be called Magridu, claiming to be a magician from a Middle Eastern country, and happened to travel here not long ago," the guard said. Middle Eastern country? Ryan's thoughts were mixed. He and Aurora didn't know if they would have the opportunity to travel there. The third assessment was the most complicated. The only 2 qualifiers had to go out to sea with the fishing boats, use their knowledge of prophecy to command the fishermen to fish, and tell them when and where to cast the nets. The amount of fish caught was the criterion for the final victory. The kingdom of West Asia lived on the sea, and fishing and navigation were very important. That's why there was such a competition. "My Highness, I request that my boat go out to sea first to cast the nets," said the magician who called himself Magridu. "No problem. It doesn't matter who goes first or later," said the prince. Magridu then went out to sea with the fishing boat and pointed to a certain sea area. After the fishermen spread the fishing nets, they caught many more fish than usual. 4 or 5 fishermen spent all their strength to pull these fish onto the boat. Seeing the fish in the net jumping around, Magridu laughed and said to Ryan on another boat, "Little friend, I must have one this time." He knew that the direction he pointed to was the location where the most fish could be caught in this sea area today. As for the boy, no matter how accurate the prediction was, he would cast the net after him. He can't conjure more fish out of thin air. Faced with Magrido's rampant laughter, Rhine smiled and said nothing. On another boat, Rhine pointed to a piece of water and asked the fishermen to cast their nets. While waiting for the net to be collected, the boy quietly took out the flute carved with shells and inlaid with pearls. This was a gift from the Sea King, as a testimony to the friends of the Sea Kingdom's court, representing that Rhine and Aurora would always be honored guests of the Sea Kingdom. As long as the flute is played, even the mermaids in the deep sea can hear it. Rhine quietly blew the flute, and the melodious sound of the flute was covered by the strong wind on the sea, and no human noticed it. But this strange melody spread to the sea. The mermaids who had been waiting there for a long time knew what to do when they heard the sound of the flute. The mermaids looked at the fish in the sea, just like people on land looked at cattle, sheep, and other animals. The difference was that it was much easier for them to tame fish than for humans to tame livestock, because the mermaids only needed to sing a song, and the fish in the sea would obey their call. The mermaids from the mermaid country called out to each other. It's the signal from the magician Rhine. According to the agreement, it's time for us to act. We want to help the princess and gain the prince's love and immortal soul. The mermaids hummed a beautiful melody in the sea, driving the fish in the sea, just like a shepherd driving a flock of sheep on the grassland. They drove all the fish into the net. Rhine picked up another shell, cast a magic spell, and threw it into the sea. As soon as it fell into the sea, the shell opened its mouth and sang a beautiful song. The song echoed in the sea, attracting more fish. The song of the mermaid princess. After waiting for a while, Rhine said, "Okay, now you can pull up the net." The fishermen began to collect the net, but failed. They used all their strength, but they couldn't pull up the net full of fish. "Your Highness, it's too heavy. There are too many fish. I have been fishing for many years, and I have never seen so many fish," the fishermen said in unison. Rhine clapped his hands, gave life and magic to the fishing net, and pulled up the full load of fish. The people around screamed and shook. The final winner was naturally Rhine. Prince Eric took Rhine's hand and wished him to become the winner. The magician who called himself Magrido didn't expect that he would lose to a child. He glared at Rhine and said fiercely, "You just beat me once. It doesn't mean anything. Just wait until I find a treasure that can make me the most powerful magician. Remember me. My name will resound throughout the continent in the future." Rhine ignored him and watched the furious Magrido disappear into the crowd. Just at this moment, a guard ran to the prince and whispered something in his ear. The prince looked at Rhine with awe. "So that's how it is. You are the sage of the kingdom of Rose, a court magician with superb magic. I heard that the kingdom of Rose is a rich country in the north, and I have always wanted to see it with my own eyes, respected magician. Please follow me." The prince took Rhine's hand. "Mage, your task is to predict the life experience of a mysterious amnesiac girl." Prince Eric took Rhine to the palace room where Ariel was, and Aurora followed behind her teacher. In the palace, the mermaid princess Ariel was very nervous. She heard that many powerful fortune tellers had come to apply, and she was uneasy. What if I'm found to be a mermaid? In the palace, she listened to the maids' reports on the competition and heard that a powerful contestant had overcome all obstacles and stood out. She finally learned that the winner was the court magician from the Northern Kingdom, a sage with a far-reaching reputation. "Oh my God, such famous and powerful people are here. No wonder he can pass such a difficult test, since he is a well-known and real magician. Just like the sea hag, he may know my origins." Ariel became more and more afraid, worried that the magician would mercilessly accuse her of being a monster and kill her cruelly after discovering that she was a monster. What would be worse than that would be not doing it herself, but letting the prince do it. These days, Ariel has long understood that in the eyes of humans on land, mermaids are monsters that symbolize shipwrecks, storms, disasters, temptations, and curses. On the way to Ariel's room, the prince explained the tasks in detail. "Respected magician," he said, "as I mentioned earlier, my father has hired fortune tellers to uncover the life experiences of a girl with a beautiful singing voice who has lost her memory. He also emphasized the importance of discovering how she acquired such a remarkable singing voice. In addition, I also have a special request. It is related to a voyage I took some time ago." At this point, the prince raised his chin slightly. He recalled that terrifying and warm night. "Please speak, Your Highness. Whether it is a task assigned by Your Majesty or your request, Your Highness, I will accomplish it." Ryan responded with a smile. Aurora, who followed behind, remained silent. After mutual communication and planning, they actually guessed what the prince's request was, but they tacitly did not say it out loud. The prince recounted the stormy night. "A month ago, I set sail on a ship. Before sailing, the sailors on the ship said that if they saw mermaids floating on the sea and singing cursed songs, the ship would encounter misfortune and be caught in a terrible storm. If no trace of mermaids is seen during the voyage, it means that there is a high probability that the journey will be calm and the bright sunshine will shine on the sea." "This is just a superstition," Ryan said. He looked for an opportunity to find a breakthrough point and lay the groundwork for more important information. "Sometimes, rumors may not be true. As a prophet and a seer, I know very well that eyes often deceive humans. The truth may be far from what people know, or even the opposite. I have studied mermaids in depth and talked to many mermaids. I know very well that the singing of mermaids can neither call storms nor deliberately lead sailors into dangerous waters full of reefs and undercurrents. On the contrary, mermaids like to sing in the dark sky and to the accompaniment of the storm when the storm is about to come. Their beautiful singing is a kind of early warning, helping sailors to avoid the storm." Prince Eric nodded gently. "I see. Thank you for your advice, honorable magician." He did not doubt the truth of what Ryan said. The sage of a certain kingdom, a prophet who has just proved his ability, such a special identity makes the boy's words naturally authoritative. The prince continued, "Yes, we didn't see the singing mermaids along the way, but the storms still came. It was a disastrous night that I couldn't bear to look back on. The sky was scary black, silver lightning shuttled between the dark clouds. The strong wind was wrapped in cold rain. The whistling of the wind swallowed up the sailors' calls, and the sound of thunder almost shattered our eardrums. The waves hit like a huge black mountain. The ship we were on was like a toy in this storm, constantly being thrown to the top of the waves and falling. Finally, I lost consciousness and fell into the sea." Recounting this unbearable memory, the prince, who was still just a teenager, couldn't help but turn pale, as if he recalled that disastrous night again. But immediately, the handsome prince smiled again. "Fortunately, the huge waves rolled me to the shore. A beautiful girl saved me, woke me up in the dawn, gave me food and water, and found people around me. I was fuzzy at the time, but the girl's smile and figure were still imprinted in my mind. It's a coincidence that the girl who saved me seemed to be somewhat similar to the amnesiac girl with a beautiful singing voice. But I'm sure they are not the same person. The girl who saved me said a few words to me, and she didn't have such a beautiful voice. After saving me, the girl left and went to a temple in the forest. Respected magician, do you have a way for me to find that girl? Let me know her identity." Ryan nodded. "Of course. Finding that girl isn't difficult for me. Divination isn't omnipotent. It requires mediums and prior information. But the information you've provided is sufficient, and Your Highness standing here yourself is the best medium. Besides, not much time has passed. What he didn't mention was that the prior information for his divination didn't solely come from the prince's account. It also came from his own advantage of knowing the story's context in advance. As for the medium, it wasn't just the prince standing before him. It was also the beautiful fish scale in his wide pocket. This scale belonged to another witness of the prince's tale. Let us begin." Ryan produced a crystal ball and began reciting a strange incantation. This crystal ball was another gift from the Deep Sea Kingdom, presented by the Sea King and Ariel sisters. It enhanced his powers of prophecy and divination. Ordinary crystals come from deep within the earth, but curiously, those who study mysticism and prophets who cherish crystals attribute them to the element of water. Rhine's crystal ball, however, came from the deep sea, formed over thousands of years under immense water pressure. Its magic was unparalleled on land. It was with this miraculous crystal ball that he had glimpsed the prince's portrait even before the court artist painted it. "Allow me to untangle your highness's doubts," Rhine said as he cast his spell. Specks of starlight emerged within the crystal ball, resembling a boy holding the vast cosmos in his hands. "Wait," the prince interjected. "Let's prioritize my father's task first. Discovering the origins of that amnesiac girl is more important than my personal questions." Rhine chuckled. "My prince, destiny's arrangements have a subtle elegance. Sometimes, people choose different paths at a fork in the road only to arrive at the same destination. Occasionally, different questions may yield the same answer." The prince didn't fully grasp Rhine's words, but he sensed that the prophet was hinting at something. The dim light within the crystal ball dissipated, and points of starlight coalesced into vivid, colorful images. The prince was struck with wonder. "So this is magic. Though father has seen many mages perform miracles, it's my first time witnessing something like this." The crystal ball displayed an image of Rhine holding the ball, with the prince crouched nearby, peering closely at its surface. "What's this?" the prince asked. "Your Highness, this is our present moment," Rhine explained. "Now we'll rewind." The scene in the crystal ball began reversing, as though time itself was rewinding in a modern film. Past events unfolded in reverse. Rhine retracting the crystal ball, the two walking backward and chatting, followed by the earlier competition where the prince declared Rhine the victor on a fishing boat. The rewind accelerated, becoming too fast for the prince to follow. Suddenly, the swirling colors stabilized into a clear scene, replaying events in chronological order. Within the crystal ball, an unconscious prince lay by the shore, dawn's light casting a soft glow on his pale, bloodless face, just as one would expect of someone who had recently fallen into the sea. "That's me. That's me. I'm about to see the girl who saved me." The prince was brimming with excitement. She was the person he thought of day and night. Soon, a young woman approached, shocked to find the unconscious prince. She woke him and called for help. Everything matched the prince's memory exactly. "Quick, dear mage, please enlarge her face. I want to see her features more clearly," the prince urged. "As you wish," Rhine replied. The woman's face grew larger and clearer. The prince finally saw the stunning visage. Her skin was delicate and white, her long black lashes framing eyes filled with a gentle smile. "Yes, it's her. It's definitely her," the prince exclaimed. For all his princely stature, he was still just a 16-year-old boy. But then, he suddenly noticed something amiss. No, why don't they look alike?" The prince recalled the amnesiac girl with the beautiful, singing voice. When he first brought her back, it was because she resembled the girl who had once saved him. Yet, now that Prince Eric saw the woman who had actually rescued him, he realized the two bore no resemblance whatsoever. Though both were equally beautiful, their features and figures shared no similarities. Still, the prince was utterly certain the woman in the crystal ball was indeed his savior. Why don't they look alike?" The prince froze, confused and dazed, as if awakening from a dream. "Your Highness, let us continue," Rhine said, gently stroking the crystal ball. The images within rewound once more. Time flowed backward again, and the tranquil dawn gave way to the tempestuous night of the storm. The howling winds, deafening thunder, and cries of sailors filled the crystal ball. Silver lightning streaked through the dark clouds, and mountainous waves dwarfed the tiny ship. The prince clenched his fists, as if reliving a nightmare. It was all coming back, the harrowing elements of that unforgettable nightmare. In the crystal ball, he saw his ship, himself aboard it, the vessel tossed skyward by a massive wave before crashing down again. He watched as the thick wooden planks splintered under the relentless onslaught, and he fell into the sea. "Dear mage, "Why are you showing me this?" the prince asked, his face pale. "Isn't this exactly what you and your father wished to uncover?" Ryan smiled. "Didn't you want to know the origins of the amnesiac girl with the world's most beautiful voice?" In the crystal ball, a figure darted swiftly across the stormy seas. A beautiful silhouette braved the raging currents, weaving through shattered beams and planks, undeterred by the danger of being crushed. Her upper body resembled a human's, but her lower half trailed a long, shimmering tail. She leapt through the waves, reaching the prince and holding him tightly, refusing to let go. And then the prince saw her face, the same unmistakable face. Prince Eric would never forget the face of that girl, the amnesiac he had found by the shore. Why? Why was she there? He never expected to see that girl again in such a scene. His heart was thrown into turmoil, waves far greater than those depicted in the crystal ball. In the vision, the girl looked just as graceful and beautiful as she did now. However, her lower half was not the slender legs he knew, but a shimmering fishtail adorned with pearls and shells, swaying gracefully amidst the fierce waves. This is... The prince's voice trembled, unable to articulate his shock. His gaze was fixed on the tiny mermaid's face in the crystal ball, the face that had etched itself deep into his soul. How many times had he taken that girl to watch the sunrise and sunset? Behind them were either the crimson glow of dawn or the blood-red hues of twilight, the setting sun stretching their shadows long upon the ground. How many times had he gifted her with the finest silks and veils, walking hand in hand with her through the palace corridors? Everyone who saw her walk couldn't help but turn to admire her light-footed grace, a gait so ethereal it seemed less like a human walking on earth and more like a fish darting through water, just as she had appeared in the ocean today. He recalled the day she stood alone in the grand hall, tilting her delicate chin upward to sing. Hers was the most beautiful melody in the world, so enchanting that even migratory birds soaring high above turned their heads to listen. Wine spilled from the golden cups as the servers froze, enraptured. When the prince heard her song, all he could do was cry and applaud, his words of praise utterly lost, for human language was inadequate to describe such unearthly beauty. Only now did the prince understand why her singing was so divine. It was never meant to belong to humans. Unable to speak, hot tears streamed down his handsome face, tracing two glistening paths. In the crystal ball's vision, the Little Mermaid clung tightly to the prince amid the raging sea, refusing to let go for even a moment. The prince's face was deathly pale, his eyes closed as he coughed up salty seawater. The mermaid used all her strength to keep his head above the surface so he could breathe fresh air. Though the storm's ferocity pushed them who knew where, she never let go. The crystal ball shifted again. The storm passed, and the sky gradually brightened. A crimson sun rose in the east, its light glistening on the ocean. The Little Mermaid, still holding the unconscious prince, swam toward the nearest land. She gazed at his wet lashes and closed eyes, her lips curling into a radiant smile. Then, the Little Mermaid kissed his forehead. In that brief moment, the prince's eyelids fluttered open slightly before closing again. So that's it? So that's it. The prince trembled as realization dawned on him. He understood now. Everything made sense. No wonder the amnesiac girl's features bore no resemblance to the human woman who had awakened him on the shore. Yet he had always felt they were alike. When a mermaid kissed his forehead, the fleeting moment when his eyes fluttered open had engraved her brave and beautiful face into his memory. That memory had fused with the appearance of the human woman who had awakened him, forming the image of his savior in his mind. In truth, both women had saved him, one after dawn and the other through a stormy night, risking her life amidst shattered masts and violent waves. The former he had remembered, the latter he had forgotten. Now, the mage had fairly shown him the faces of both saviors. The ones who saved you were two different girls, but in your memory, their faces may have blended into a single, indistinct image. Rhine said, holding the crystal ball. This is the answer you sought and the truth your father wanted to know. The prince suddenly remembered his father's command. So, The amnesiac girl I found by the shore, the one with the most beautiful voice in the world, is a mermaid, but I clearly saw her with human legs. Ryan gently stroked the crystal ball once more. Princess Ariel, the Little Mermaid, your amnesiac girl who saved you on that stormy night, sought the terrifying sea hag to exchange her beautiful tail for human legs, all to come ashore, seek your love, and gain an immortal soul. The scene shifted to Ariel's encounter with the sea hag. My lovely princess, ha! What a foolish wish, the sea hag cackled. You want to trade your fish tail for a pair of human legs and turn into a land-dwelling freak? You dream of making a handsome prince fall in love with you, pouring all his thoughts and emotions into you, and thus gaining an immortal soul. The idea of a human loving a sea creature is utterly laughable. The prince watched the sea hag's grotesque grin and Ariel's pale, trembling resolve. He could no longer hold back his sobs. In the vision, Rhine deliberately obscured his and Aurora's forms, making it seem as though the mermaid princess had encountered another mage in the sea by chance. When the sea hag demanded Ariel's voice as payment, a kind-hearted mage gave the princess a potion for free. Bless that kind-hearted mage, the prince exclaimed. May the gods protect him. Without him, I would never have heard Ariel's heavenly voice. There's no greater regret than that. Ryan continued stroking the crystal ball, revealing scenes from various times. Those he had experienced firsthand were clearer, while others he knew less about were hazy. The prince saw Ariel's grandmother stroking her long hair and telling her stories about humans and their immortal souls. He saw Ariel and her sisters chasing fish under the sea, the crowned Sea King in his majestic palace, and many other aspects of the mermaid kingdom. Though he had known Ariel for so long, he had never understood her as he did now. He learned that his savior was the princess of an underwater kingdom, a fact he had once half-joked about, calling her a foreign princess, which was true in a way. He learned the secret of the immortal soul, Ariel's curse, and the tragic fate awaiting her if they didn't fall in love and marry. She would dissolve into sea foam. Eric knew everything he needed to know. Unable to contain himself, he turned and sprinted toward Ariel's palace. He couldn't wait another second to tell her of his burning love. Watching the prince's retreating figure, Rhine and Aurora exchanged a knowing smile.